And I guess we'll just start. This will be an AMA, and I would request if perhaps Avi and Barnacle could introduce themselves first.
Yeah, so I'll go first. Avi, I'm a vegan medical doctor. I am interested in philosophical debates, empirical debates, um, intellectually stimulating conversations. And yeah, I have a YouTube channel, a Twitter, and yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. So
And I'm Barnacle. I'm a fourth year medical student, and in the US system, fourth year's last year. So I'll be done in about a year. My interests are nutrition, like healthcare, and how that intersects with veganism. And I have no social media because I am hiding from program directors.
there you go.
Okay. Actually, Mark, if you want to introduce yourself as
Wait,
well.
yeah, I thought you wanted me up here to introduce them with something hype.
I'm
Okay, I mean, they already introduced themselves. I'm not gonna do it again. That's fine.
What about you introduce yourself?
Me? No, I'm not part of this AMA.
Okay,
well,
Mark
okay,
is- Mark
It's
is
okay.
stats
My
god.
reputation
That's all you need
precedes
to know.
me. Everyone knows I'm the stats god, so I don't even need to say that. It's even in my name. So, yeah, I'm the stats god. That's it.
Anyhow, yeah. So I just start us off with the first question I have for both, which is like, are there any were you at any time obligated to do something that you consider to be non-vegan in medical school?
Let me think about that. Obligated to do something non-vegan in medical school. Oh, go for it. I'll think.
Yeah.
I'll keep thinking while you answer that.
Yeah, so I did my pediatrics rotation a couple months ago, and one of the things they recommend for toddlers is to have, I don't remember the exact amount, but a certain number of ounces of whole milk each day. And that's obviously not vegan. The reason they recommend that is toddlers, they're growing a lot, their nerves are myelating and all that. So, they need a lot of fat and they need a lot of protein. And I would have to counsel patients on nutrition. And unfortunately, that was one of the guidelines. My way of going about that was that I would never say that I personally recommend it, because I don't. I don't think it's right to normalize cruelty starting from an early age, especially when there are other alternatives that are nutritionally adequate. So I would say this is what the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends. And generally people don't pry further, but if they did, I would say I'm vegan. I don't personally recommend this. And then there were a couple times where I actually had a few patients who didn't want to give their children milk for a variety of reasons. And I would try to work with my attendings who, just kind of like reflexively would say, well, we don't recommend plant-based milks, we recommend this. And I would say, listen, like, what's the actual reason? If the macronutrients are equivalent, is there actually a problem? And then, they said no. So I said, okay, well, this is the plant-based milk that they can use, because I actually found the one that was almost identical to whole milk. So yeah, that's how I approached it.
It's also worth noting for anyone listening that the American Academy of Pediatrics is totally fine with plant-based milks for individuals who are vegan for ethical reasons. I'll say one thing.
Hold on. Before we move on, short plug. Avi, Barnacle, and I, featuring yours truly, the Stats God. We actually made a video recently on vegan children and their many biomarkers. So and basically their health. So go check it out on Avi's channel. So yeah, it's an interesting video.
Yeah, I'll just say that because I still haven't thought of a situation where I was forced to do something non-vegan in medical school. I'll just say medical schools used to be like pretty brutal when it came to this kind of thing. It used to be that you had to perform certain cruel things on dogs to illustrate like myocardial infarctions by tying off like vessels in a dog heart and stuff like that. It was pretty brutal. These days they showed a video of it when I was there. Some people walked out, but it used to be a lot. Whatever it is now, it used to be like incredibly worse than that. But me personally, I don't remember a single example of when I had to do something non-vegan.
Oh, I also have to administer propofol because I'm applying into anesthesiology, but that's a whole other conversation. It contains, just so vegans are aware, it contains egg lecithin. It's a tiny, tiny amount. We actually, if you go to study archives, we did the calculation for like roughly like the equivalent of egg, or really a fraction of egg you would typically see used during like an operation. So of course, like that comes down to personal choice, but it is something that vegans should be aware of. So if you do have to have a surgery, you definitely want to tell your anesthesiologist if you have a problem with being administered propofol, and ideally, you know, when you meet them the day before your surgery and not like last minute, so they can plan an alternative anesthesia plan for you.
Right. Yeah. The reason why I ask is because, you know, if you see often in movies, you'll see that in high school, I think especially in America, maybe I'm confused, like they would dissect, for example, frogs and
Definitely, that was a thing. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm not sure if there's like things more like that in medical school, right? Where you're sort of obligated to, for example, a lot of the dissect, like the histology cuts that you have. I'm not sure how to say that. They are often from animals, right? And I don't know if, you know, that's why I ask. So.
Yeah, I mean, we dissect humans, so that's, you know, that's okay. That's vegan. They died of natural causes. I wasn't vegan actually when I did histology, so I don't know that I was necessarily paying attention. And Avi, I don't know that you were either back like first year of medical school.
I didn't do any dissections in terms of animals. The only dissections I did were on humans that have already died. Obviously, we're not dissecting live humans. So no, I genuinely don't recall any examples of when I did something when I was forced to do something not vegan.
Right. So we'll bring on the next person. I think the first person that raised their hand was a non-vegan. Ray, you could join the stage.
Hello. I'd like to thank Barnacle and Avi for being here. I know you guys have some prevalently heavy time issues, being doctors and medical students. First, I'd like to state my father was a virologist with the CDC for over 30 years. He had his MD in diagnostics. So it was mentioned, I'm going to jump right into this after that. It was mentioned earlier that, Avi, you had a background or some knowledge about vaccines. Is that true?
I have some knowledge about it. I've read through the trials. I've read through both the preclinical and clinical trials by Pfizer, Moderna, as well as the phase. The phase 2 and phase 3 randomized controlled trials. I've also read through the ecological studies that have come after. So I mean, I do have some knowledge of it, enough knowledge to debate anti-vaxxers on the topic, certainly.
Okay. I'm not even trying to debate you. I'm literally here for your knowledge. I'm literally here to pick your brain. I was wondering if you could go into the whole entire production of a vaccine, what harm it might cause. Just the production, not the use of it.
Yeah, so are you asking specifically about any potential animal products that may be used in the vaccine construction process, or are you talking about?
I'm literally talking about the whole process. Like, as a consumer, which I'm not, if I had to choose a vaccine that was less harmful to any others, is there a specific company that produces one? Or is it something that I could request from the doctor, and that doctor give me the background of how that is produced, so I could be less harmful?
So the answer to that is probably not really. There is. So first off, there's no animal products in any in the Pfizer vaccine, in the Moderna vaccine, in the AstraZeneca vaccine. Nor am I aware of any like horrific or like horrendous process that goes on to make it like some sort of environmental issue through the production. In terms of the production process behind it, there is, I believe, in Pfizer, there is some very, very trace product that is made from some trace amount of bovine milk that doesn't actually make it into the finalized product. Importantly, this is not the case with Moderna. The Moderna vaccine doesn't have a shred of animal products, not only in the actual vaccine, but through all steps of the production chain. And I'm not aware of any products in any step of the production chain that have disastrous or even like moderately concerning environmental consequences. So to the question is, are you going to make any real difference by choosing one vaccine over another for some environmental reason or for some vegan reason? The answer is probably not really.
Okay. And then my next question, if I can, if that's plausible, is to Barnacle.
Sure.
Being caught up in the lifestyle of a more or less a very high average college student or medical student. Sorry for if I belittled your knowledge or your field. How do you find time to be vegan, basically? Because I know that medical students have statistically they have like less sleep than normal people, and they're more driven to be productive in their field. How do you find time to work in your vegan diet?
So that was actually something I was working on. It actually caused me to like kind of put off being vegan until like Avi gave me like the definitive push. So yes, Avi is the reason I'm vegan, guys, by the way. But basically, there are times when it's difficult. I've never had the same issues with sleep. I've always been able to get a decent amount of sleep, but there were times like when I was on rotations, like for example, in my obstetrics and gynecology rotation, there's not a lot of time to eat. And I was relying on hospital food. And the only food in our cafeteria, like there was just dairy and everything, like every single soup had cream in it for some reason. So like that was difficult. It was like I either remembered to pack lunch or I ate like bread and grapes. And so when you have to like do a 12-hour day on bread and grapes, the next day you kind of remember to like take 5 minutes and pack a lunch. Definitely a lot of protein bars, a lot of like, I have a plant-based protein shake I use now. So they're sneaking in a lot of the stuff like that. During this time, am I eating a bunch of whole healthy foods? No, but I would like, regardless of what diet I'm going to have, that would be the case. Like there just isn't that much time to cook,
Okay, that's reasonable. Okay, that's cool. Thank you. I have one last statement. You guys were talking about dissecting of animals and humans earlier.
Yeah.
Why do you separate the two?
So for the case of like from the perspective of like veganism, you mean, or?
I'm talking more of a maybe it's a transcendental philosophy of basically human beings trying to separate them from nature rather than being a part of nature. And I was wondering why most people in the medical field choose to separate humans from, like, say, a horse or a dog or whatever. I know in the field of medicine there's a physiological difference and an anatomy. God, I'm so nervous. I'm sorry. I know there's an anatomy difference and a physiological difference, but in the state of just being, why is it that most vegans, especially doctors, tend to separate the two?
So I can only answer from the perspective of what I was talking about before with dissections. There's an ethical difference between dissecting a human and dissecting an animal. When you dissect a human, they died of natural causes. And while this may or may not actually be the case in reality, but we hope and we assume that they consented for their body to be donated to science and to be, to help medical students learn. So this is something where they were not killed and they knew that this was going to happen with their body and this is what they wanted to happen with their body. In the case of an animal, they were probably, first of all, did not lead a happy life and they were killed prematurely and all of this was done against their will. So I believe it's much more ethical to dissect a human than an animal in that case. I don't know if Avi has some other perspectives as well.
Well, if you're asking the reason why in medical school they dissect humans and not animals, it's just because it's more informative for the education of a doctor to do so. So that's trivially going to be the reason why that's being done. If you're asking some ethical question, well, if the context were the same, if there was just some animal that died naturally, and you took that animal off the road or something and you dissected the animal, versus if a human died naturally and you took that human off the road and dissected the human, I'd consider the ethical stance in those two cases to be the same. So in the case of these humans, these are humans that have either donated their body to science. I think that's almost always the case. I don't even think it's the case that they take them for off the street or anything like that. But even if they did, I would just consider the moral status the same if they're just taking a human off the street who died of natural causes, or same thing with an animal. I wouldn't have an ethical problem doing either. Now, if you're just catching, if you're going out catching humans and dissecting them, I would have a moral problem with that. Same thing if you're going out catching a deer or something, or a rabbit or whatever, and doing some kind of dissection on them. Yeah, then I would have an ethical problem with it.
Okay, I'm not trying to argue ethics. I was more trying to ask why is there a separation between an animal and a human? As in, I don't see that difference, because humans are a part of nature, animals are part of nature, and most scientists file humans into the species of being an animal. So I was asking, why do doctors potentially lean towards separating the two?
From my perspective, I do agree we're animals. It's just that for us, I think we're humans are the only animals basically that I'm trained to treat. That's really what it comes down to.
I do just have to say that, yeah, we do have more people.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. That was the last thing I had to ask. I was really interested in the doctor's opinion and the medical student's opinion.
just to answer the question, but the reason we separate human animals from non-human animals in terms of what we're trying to dissect is because medical schools are trying to teach doctors to treat humans, and so it's just with a more specific domain to treating these specific types of animals they're treating. Like just the same way, if you were going to specialize in only treating dogs, you wouldn't dissect humans because, well, dogs and humans are animals. You would dissect a dog because you are trying to learn about the dog anatomy, not the human anatomy. Same thing is true the other way around. That's all.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for allowing me up on the soapbox again, guys. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to take the next person up stage. Gordon, you have the invite.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. So I have a quick series of questions. I'll try to keep them as concise as possible. First is directed actually to you, Avi. I just recently watched you and Ask Yourself dissect the James Wilkes versus Chris Kresser, debate on Joe Rogan's podcast. And this is the first time that I ran across you talking about how there's a vegan myth about B12. Traces of dirt, streams, yada yada. And I was curious. I also watched the video where Ask Yourself, narrates your explanation as to why that's a myth. And I was curious if there's any consensus that you know of where we got sufficient B12 from, pre-industry.
So I'm not sure what because humans have been around the block in all sorts of different areas throughout different periods of time. So I'm not sure if you're going to find some anthropologic consensus of things like, okay, well, it's clearly they got it from this. But what I can tell you is that even if there is no consensus on where we got it from, it doesn't mean that that somehow interacts with the critique. You don't need a consensus in order to be able to make the claim that it wasn't from this source. So with or without a consensus, I think all the criticisms still stand. Now, if you're looking for potential candidates, one potential candidate would be certain types of insects. One thing that because one thing that has been available to humans throughout just about all of history has been insects. Animals that have been hunted have not been available to humans throughout all of history, throughout all of their geographic areas. Insects certainly have, and there are certain specific insects that do have copious amounts of B12. A lot of insects don't have any B12. Some insects have quite a bit of it. So that's one candidate. Other candidates, of course, are animals that have been hunted. But regardless of whether it's important to note that regardless of whether we have the answer to where we did get our B12 or not, that doesn't preclude us from ruling out us, or at least making a very strong inference that we didn't get it from these sources, whether they're water, mud, soil, feces from other animals, watercress, duckweed, all of the, grasping at straw, hilarious attempts to say that, you can get B12 in sufficient quantities on a natural herbivorous diet. It doesn't do any good to make those claims. It just damages our movement. So
yeah. I agree for sure. Second question. I've been following Dr. Greger for a while, and I've been using the Daily Dozen app that was created by him and his group. And just recently, I learned that you have some disagreements with him and a few other leading and known vegan doctors in the area. I was wondering, what's your take on the Daily Dozen in general?
So I haven't seen the Daily Dozen app, so I can't really give a take on that. But I can give a take on Dr. Greger in general. I think not everything he posts is wrong. He does occasionally post things that are correct. But what I will tell you is that when you watch something from Dr. Greger, almost always it will be the case that it's very biased and very one-sided. And because of that, many times he does get things wrong. And unfortunately, even when corrected, because he releases things ahead of time, he sometimes continues to release things that are also incorrect. So I can't comment on the Daily Dozen app, but what I can tell you is it's very unfortunate that there is a lot of misinformation in Dr. Greger's content. Yeah, and it comes from I do believe it comes from a place of bias.
Okay, so in that case, for anyone who's been following and getting information from him, do you have, from nutritionfacts.org in general, do you have a recommendation for an alternative?
Yes, I do. I have several alternatives that I would recommend. One is veganhealth.org. Another is theveganrd.com. So veganhealth.org is Jack Norris. The Vegan RD is Ginny Messina. They're both registered dietitians. Also, Gil Carvalho, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name, is a very good plant-based resource for nutrition. Those would be the big ones. They're very they seem very objective. They seem very willing to accept counterfactual data, and those would be my recommended sources to replace nutritionfacts.org.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a couple questions on behalf of a friend. She's in the audience, Willa Caterpillar. The first is, what's your take on medical medium?
Medical medium. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with that.
Okay, then perhaps the next one. Let me find his.
Medical medium's the celery juice guy.
Yeah.
Oh God. I'm not familiar with him, but I can already tell this is not something I ever want to be familiar
with. He's conversing with the spirit through some weird medium or with some birthright gift, and then it said, some weird things about celery juice. I wouldn't trust him.
Okay, and then what's your take on a John A. McDougall?
I think he's an ideologue. Just probably just slightly more ideological even than Dr. Greger. I think he does quite a bit of damage when he gets up on stage and says the things he does about modern medicine, in comparison to diet, specifically his specific type of vegan diet. But yeah, I have poor opinions of him.
Do you have also poor opinions on the diet that he's trying to promote, which is low fat, high carb?
I wouldn't say I have poor opinions. It's not that type of diet that I have poor opinions about. Well, to some degree, at some point you get to be concerned if you go too low fat enough. You get to be concerned about fat soluble vitamin deficiencies. So in that case, I would have poor opinions on it. But general low fat diets, I'm not very concerned or have poor opinions about it. It's just when people make claims like, this is the only diet you could be healthy on, or this is the optimal diet, and vegan diets that have higher fat contents will be less healthy, based on just hilarious data from either Ornish or Esselstyn. That I do have a poor view on.
Barnacle, would you actually like to comment on any of these questions?
No, I think Avi's kind of got the same view I do.
I think it's a good thing to note that as far as the data we have now, you can pretty much do any kind of macro split that you want in veganism and have it healthy. So I don't feel the need to necessarily pigeonhole myself into low carb or high protein or high carb, whatever. Just appropriately plan it. Yeah. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Makes sense.
No, I agree.
Yep, I agree too.
Do you have any tips for a bachelor student for nutrition?
Learn statistics. I'm biased,
yeah.
but yeah.
No, I agree. Definitely get a grasp around the basics of statistics at the least. Be very, very wary about who you choose to follow or get advice from on Twitter or social media or things like that. And just really, learn the basics of evaluating studies, statistics, and such before you start hanging your hat on any nutrition study or whatever.
Yeah. Also.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Also, I'd like to this. I don't know if it's kind of enfolded in that, but learn research methodology. So different types of study designs, what you need to watch out for with them, what the advantages are, which ones are, learn the evidence hierarchy. And I would say the sooner you get actually reading the scientific literature, because it's actually a skill. First time I looked at a publication, I was cross-eyed. You get better at it with time and you get better at interpreting it. So get your hands on that early and find people you do trust and talk to them and, network with them.
Yeah. I have a couple of words. So actually, to pull a little plug, back in the study archives, we have a channel header called Epidemiology, and under that we have a lot of resources to things like research methodology and statistics and whatnot that are relevant in nutritional studies. Some curated by me, some curated by our wonderful Barnacle here. So I would go check that out if you're interested in learning more. And also, be careful who you get your information from. Actually, it's important to note that despite what some engineers on Twitter may say, nutrition is a pretty hard science. It is pretty quantitative, so it's not really something that's I don't know, super qualitative. It's a pretty hard science.
Yeah, this semester certainly has been difficult. And statistics is my favorite subcategory in it so far, so interesting coincidence. Sorry, Dentis, do you want to say something?
No, I do want to say I'm really sorry, but we do have to keep just a couple questions per person.
Yep, sorry. I'm ready to go to the audience.
Right. Thank you. So next up, I do not know how to spell your name, so you have to invite.
Hello. Is my mic working?
Hello? We can hear you.
Okay, so I wanted to ask Dr. Avi a couple questions. My first question to Avi is how did Ask Yourself Turn You Vegan? Was it by Name the Trait at first?
Yeah, it was actually. That is how Ask Yourself got me vegan. It wasn't easy. I'll just tell you, before I went vegan, I was a hardcore steak and potatoes kind of person. I was at the point where if a meal did not contain some sort of animal meat, I just wouldn't consider it a meal. So I was a pretty meat heavy type of person. But yeah, it was Name the Trait, and it wasn't easy. It took about 2 months of us going back and forth on it. But yeah, to answer your question, that is how he convinced me.
Okay, so what trait did Ask Yourself run into you to turn you vegan?
Are you asking what traits I offered to the Name the Trait?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you.
Oh, yeah. Quite a few embarrassing ones. Let's just see. Well, I'm trying to remember it. It's been a while. So, at first it was species extinction, species well, I didn't. To be fair, I didn't offer species maximality. I just did that as a intellectual exercise. At one point, I was doing it with fish and trying to make the case that they had just the trait was that their sentience level was so incredibly low. But none of these really ended up working out. So, yeah.
Thanks. I also have another question. Did you, like in university, did you take like a course in like statistics and all?
Yes, I did take a course in statistics in university. It was just one course though.
Okay. And how did you meet Barnacle? If you're okay.
Barnacle became my landlord quite a while ago, and she engages in all of the horrible policies that landlords engage in, all of the rent abuse and everything like that. So, if anyone can, petition Barnacle to make things easier on me, I would appreciate it.
Okay.
He's memeing, guys.
Okay.
Actually, really quick, what convinced you of veganism, Barnacle? If I'm not butchering your name.
No, I mean that's my name here. So it's like when I met Avi, I was actually like kind of 90% there. I was just in this place where I'm like, it's really hard during like third year of medical school, especially because like when I was on my medicine rotation, we were getting provided food every day, and like that was never vegan. So I was just like, you know what, I'm going to do this in the future once things slow down, and like I'm making that attending salary. Like I know it was the right thing to do. It was just for me. I was like, oh, it's just like too hard right now. My thing was like the reason I came to that conclusion was like after I became aware of like that dog eating festival. I have 2 dogs. I love them. They are my children. And like if I wouldn't do it to my dogs, like I wouldn't do it to any other animal. So that's kind of where I was at, or I didn't want to. And then I was kind of going like, oh, but like what's wrong with dairy? And then like Avi took 30 seconds to explain what was wrong with dairy. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll go vegan. And then I think he just kind of gave me that reassurance, like, this is something you can do during medical school. You're going to be fine. And he was, there to give me like nutritional advice and stuff. I think I needed that like little extra push, and that having that resource to help me out in my transition.
I see. Any last question?
Yeah. What is like? Wait, can you hear me? Is my mic working?
Yeah, we can hear
Yeah,
you.
you're fine.
Okay, so my question is there anything you had to do that wasn't vegan to become a doctor?
Didn't we already go over this question?
We went over this question.
Yeah, we already went over it, Line. Yeah, that was the first one asked by Euphemius here.
Okay, I didn't know. That was all. Thank you
Right,
for answering my question.
Well, do you want to ask a different one instead?
Sure. What is your favorite video game apart from StarCraft?
Probably Warcraft.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up, Liam. You have the invite. You should be able to join. On the top, there will be a green bar.
Oh, hi.
There we go.
I'm actually gonna get off, but I have a question.
Hey Google, how much time on timer?
Is it like a varying level thing, or is it just one flat plane that you understand it as? That's just all.
Understand what as?
Like sentience, I guess. Is it like a varying level between them, but like, or is it like all considered equal and not based on cognitive level or understanding?
No, I consider that I don't consider all beings that have sentience have an equal degree of sentience. I clearly think that there are different degrees to which one can experience the world, or have different experiences of consciousness, or more quote unquote rich experiences. So no, I don't think that any being that's sentient is just equally sentient.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, Liam.
Any other question?
No.
Would anyone else like to answer that question as well? Okay. Next up, we got Satan. Satan.
Hey, is my mic working?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hey, Avi, hey, Barnacle. I was just wondering, kind of a two-part question. You were talking earlier about some of the issues that certain vegan doctors have when they're discussing nutrition science. Do you think that doctors are, generally speaking, well-equipped to assess nutrition studies and give advice on it? And do you think that doctors get enough nutrition education during their schooling?
So generally, no. But there are exceptions. There are some doctors who probably do have better nutrition education than others. So I don't think this is a universal thing. Generally, it's a question. I realize the question is generally speaking. So I'll answer. Generally speaking, the answer is no. If they're only relying on their education and they're not relying on their own learning, and they haven't done their own learning, or they haven't done some other form of education, then the answer would be no.
Yeah, and I can kind of add to that. One of the things that we're supposed to do with our education is use it. Like, we're supposed to be equipped to continue to educate over our lifetime. That's something that's really emphasized in medicine, is lifelong learning. So some doctors choose to do that, some don't do it as much as they should, and some, don't see a reason to really take a deep dive into nutrition. So of course it's going to vary. I know there's these sayings that go around, like doctors only get 15 minutes or one lecture in nutrition. And I don't really consider that true. We don't, at my school, at least, we don't formally get a lecture in nutrition, but nutrition is brought up, during my preclinical years, it was brought up during cardiology, it was brought up in biochemistry. And then in a lot of my rotations, so when I did obstetrics and gynecology, pediatrics, family medicine, that it was really important to know a decent amount of nutrition so I could counsel patients. So I just wanted to emphasize that that's not exactly true.
Okay, yeah, and that was actually going to be a next part of my question, is if that was true, because I know that some vegan medical doctors will say that. So, but yeah, thanks for the answers, guys. That's pretty much it.
You're welcome.
Right, thank you. Next up, 6.
Hear me? Is this thing working?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
There was a question here a while ago, and it was a really heated argument about the validity and the necessity of relying on science. Because I think that it raises an interesting point about how within the past 2 years or so, or even just in general, that there's a lot of people that don't trust science. They don't believe it. Because what's the point of believing in scientific studies that have a foundation when they're rooted from other scientific studies, and that goes as far back as the scientific method goes. You illustrate the importance of evidence hierarchies and also reliable sources. But if that's the case, then I want you to think about this from the perspective of a person that knows their life as a meat eater. This is how they make their living, right? But then you show them an abstract and they don't even make it past it because they don't know if they can trust it in an age where, the doctors are either incognito or they're just, 1 minute they're leaning towards one perspective, another minute they're correcting themselves, another minute another scientist is correcting them. And these people don't even have, access to the same verifiable sources as, a med student might or a doctor might, because not everybody gets to educate themselves continuously throughout their lifespan. Does that make sense?
I mean, in terms of the scientific method is a tool for a given goal. It's
Right.
for generating reliable answers to certain empirical questions. If your goal is to convince an individual to do X, Y, Z, then that's just going to depend on the things that are going to convince the individual to do X, Y, Z. If your goal is to find the truth about a given empirical question, then yes, the scientific method is a tool that does a very good job about that. So I think this is just coming down to some kind of conflation of goals, and yeah.
Right, because I think that the medical field, it's an industry too. It is an industry as well. And that still didn't really answer my question, because I remember that question from that last debate because it really stuck out to me. The question was,
Sorry, what was the question that wasn't answered?
the question was, why should I believe in science when science has a track record of being wholly consistent, when scientists very regularly correct each other, and there's also an issue of finding bias in sources and then finding not enough verifiable sources.
When you say trusting science, what do you mean? Just trusting the findings of a given paper that comes out, or trusting what
exactly, because you can't.
The answer is that I don't say you should trust. If that's what you mean by trusting science, then I don't say you should trust science. By science, I just mean the process of science, the tool that science is. Now, if what by science you just mean like when a new paper comes out or something, if you're asking, should I just trust the paper that came out? No, the answer I'm going to tell you is no. There are plenty of papers that are nonsense that come out. However, I do think that science as a tool is a very reliable tool if done appropriately to parse out the answers to given questions. And the fact that I'll also add that the fact that scientists have changed their views and have corrected themselves is actually not a reason to. Now, again, I'm not saying to trust anything that comes your way either way, but that property you mentioned is actually a good thing, not a bad thing. Imagine if it were the other way around. Imagine if someone couldn't change their mind on anything.
Yes.
Do you think saying like, well, they never got corrected, they never admitted they were wrong, like, is that a reason to trust that person? Like, no, of course not. That's actually a strong reason to not trust that individual.
Right.
Yeah, and they're either ideologically driven or they're just dumb. Yeah, you want someone who is going to update their prior beliefs based on new information and then present their conclusions differently. Like, I don't see why you would want, someone who is unable to move in the face of new evidence.
Right, so I want you to consider this from the perspective of somebody that's always on the ground. They don't actively seek out scientific literature. They don't have access, because I mentioned this before in saying that it is still an industry. And when I was at college, I had to pay for my sources to get like the info that I needed for the thesis papers that I had to write. Now that I'm not in college, I just don't have access, and the information that's allotted to me is just information that's available to the public. I sincerely believe that not enough people have, it sounds rude because it sounds like I'm calling people uneducated, and that's really not the case. But it's not common that people have as much tools as doctors or med students to reliably update themselves to the most recent information about whatever it is. That's why I had asked about the reliability of trusting science, and you answered that question. You're not trusting science itself. You're breaking down the source, making sure it's verifiable information, and you can even try it out yourself if you sincerely believe in the scientific method. But not everybody does that. Not everybody's even able to do that. So how am I supposed to what would you recommend, or how would you recommend somebody learn to immerse themselves in a paper and really dissect themselves and acquaint themselves to scientific literature for anything, not even just veganism?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat the last part?
I'll briefly summarize. How should I learn? No, how am I able to learn to acquaint myself with scientific literature and really dissect it so that I can draw new conclusions and update my perspectives about things?
So that's a good question, and it's a really unfortunately, if it were easy to just become proficient in dissecting scientific research and papers,
yeah, like it really is just like, well, just learn, idiot. Just read it and learn.
Yeah,
I don't
no,
think that's
it's
fair.
yeah, no, yeah, for sure. It's not an. I just want to say it's not an easy thing to do. It does require taking time out of your day and learning. I would suggest that there are certain sources in our study archive. Actually, we have certain basic guides on how to read scientific papers, starting off with understanding the evidence hierarchy, understanding certain things about biostats, and research methodology. So we have sources to do that. There's no quick answer I'm going to be able to give you where you're going to come out being, oh, now I know how to dissect studies and read them out. So I'm not going to be able to do that in this AMA.
Yeah, it's a skill.
But what I can do is refer to you to certain sources that you can study and get better at doing that.
Could you post those links somewhere?
Yeah, sure. It's in our my Discord is posted in the AMA announcement. And we have a
server, dude. I just want like an article. You want me to join the server?
Well, the thing is that we have
it's a collection
it's not one article.
Yeah,
it's many different articles. It's like a whole.
Yeah.
It's like, you can think of it as like a course.
Right.
If I can kind of butt in, I will say the sources I posted from Boston University are pretty good at like learning how to go through a study. That might be, if you don't want to join a whole server just to find that. I don't know if one of you can like maybe just link that. That might be like a good place to start. Another thing I'll add is you can be an expert at statistics and you can be an expert at research methodology and all that, and you still don't have everything you need necessarily to actually dissect a study, because you actually need to understand the specific science. So if it's a nutrition study, you need to know a little biochemistry. If it's an environmental study, you need to know some environmental science, because everything's going to have different methods and just a different background. So at some point you do have to just find experts in that field you trust and talk to them.
Right. And I think one thing I want to touch on is that it sounds like, when he speaks about science, he speaks about, he's actually talking a lot in large part about scientific communication. And it's like, how do we trust this expert over the other? How do we know that they're making the proper interpretations? And, as a layperson, for sure, it's hard to, really understand that without learning the relevant statistics, the relevant research methodology, relevant nutrition stuff. But usually, I think, like if we were to recommend sources for a layperson, I think we, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that the two here would generally recommend the guidelines, because if you go to any Twitter, any given Twitter source, or if you go to any given book, these aren't necessarily like peer reviewed or necessarily the most rigorous things, whereas with guidelines, they are generally like, they have a much higher likelihood of actually like being quality information, because there's a lot of academic thought put into it, a lot of peer review, a lot of crosstalk. So I think that, yeah, as kind of cliche as it sounds, generally like, national or national guidelines for are generally a good idea. I don't know what you guys think.
I agree with that. Usually, like when I'm working with a patient, that's the first thing I will look at to like get some guidance on how to treat.
Those are pretty much my only two questions, so I'll let the next speaker speak. No, thank you.
Doesn't care. Should be a green bar on the top. I guess I'll just bring on the. Oh, they joined.
Hello.
Hey, how are you? We can hear you.
Can't hear any of you.
You can't hear us right now?
No.
All right, well, you might have to get the audio sorted out. We'll take the next question.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Dio next. There we go.
Hey, what's up? What's up?
Hey, what's going on?
Not much, man. I got some questions for. I know Barnacle, you're more of the health kind of guy, but I have some questions for anyone who'd want to answer some of my ethical questions.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, so in my mind, I think veganism, your argument for veganism can only be as strong as your argument for moral realism. Because I think veganism.
What's the argument? Wait, hold on. When you say argument for veganism, do you mean like reasons one ought be vegan?
Yeah.
Okay. And when you say moral realism, are you talking about external normative reasons?
I just mean moral realism by the fact that like morals maybe moral realism isn't as good as an explanation, and more moral objectivism.
Yeah, that would refer to external normative reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, completely external from the mind.
Yeah. So I mean, that's just going to be a trivially false claim then, because someone can cash out views at reasons as internal normative reasons, and just be motivated by internal normative reasons to go vegan. And someone can have arguments for veganism that are internally motivating.
I understand that. But I think my issue comes when people who are vegans try to use that ethical principle on someone else who doesn't carry those internal normative reasons and tries to apply the logic of an external normative reason to their ethicality or their framework.
Well, if what you're saying is you have an issue with someone presenting an internal normative reason as an external normative reason, I'm not going to disagree with you. I also have a problem with people doing that. But that doesn't change the fact that people can provide very good reasons for others to go vegan by providing them with things that align with their internal normative reasons, or providing them with scenarios that prompt them to reflect on their internal on their internal values, such that reasons obtain that are internal.
All right,
which is what generally Name the Trade generally tends to do. It's upon reflection, but yeah.
So if I come from a position of, let's say, moral nihilism, and I reject all of those.
Well, then I'm gonna have to stop you and just say, like, when you say moral nihilism, do you mean that do you just mean that there are no external normative reasons? Is that what moral nihilism is, or are you?
I would hold the position that all moral claims would be false, like an error theorist.
And by moral claim, and okay, so we're still not disambiguating enough. So if by moral claims, are you talking about moral claims that refer to some type of objective external
objective
normative
exterior for the mind?
Okay, yeah, then the response is just going to be the same then. It's just going to be false for the same reason, because it's just not talking about the thing that we're talking about. We're not talking about objective normative reasons. We're not talking about objective morality. At least I'm not. So pointing out that
so I think the difference between you, Avi, and most vegan people that argue for veganism is they're going to argue veganism is attached or fits the criteria of some form of external morality. That's my issue.
Well, if you have if you have an issue with people making claims about external normative reasons, look, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you, but that's not going to be unique to vegans. There are plenty of people who make arguments for external normative reasons for all sorts of things.
Of course.
And that, yeah, but that's not going to be a criticism of veganism. It's just going to be a criticism of anyone who tries to argue for anything in terms of external normative reasons.
Yeah, that's what my
me
argument
personally.
would be. That's my criticism.
But importantly, this is not going to be a criticism to anything I'm arguing for, anything or anything Ask Yourself will argue for, or anything I even take it that Barnacle would argue for. So you're not bringing a criticism against our arguments for veganism. You're just bringing a criticism for some other person or people that you've heard make arguments for veganism, which is fine.
Mhm.
You could do that. I'm not going to disagree with you, but I'll just point out that criticism is impotent to anything that I say.
Sure, and yeah, I completely accept veganism being valid between an internal reasoning. I have no issue with that. And if that's the position that you take, I have no issue with that. So I was going off to the presupposition or the understanding that I've like talked to many vegans about. Sorry, they take the
I'll just
position.
point out that we're unfortunately this type of circle that we come from here is very, very different than the usual like vegan sphere.
Mhm.
We are growing. Fortunately, we are our style and brand of sort of veganism is growing, and we're taking over like the more inept forms of vegan branding. So that's a good thing. But we are.
I
do
mean,
think
even
we're
within
still.
the server, Avi, I've commented that many times.
Wait, in which server?
The server that we're in right now.
No, I'm not talking about this server.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking
Yeah,
about
I have
either
no
the
issue with
Ask
the
Yourself
internal,
Discord server.
just an internal moral
Just to
reasoning.
be
I
clear,
just
I'm
wanted to
not
make
I'm
sure.
talking about just to be clear about the circle that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Ask Yourself server or the Study Archive server.
Awesome.
When I talk about like the type of brand, yeah.
So I just wanted to run it by you and make sure like you wouldn't hold the same position that I think is kind of ridiculous of applying veganism to some objective external criteria.
No, I mean, look, Dio, I've already said like I've said this like for
Yeah,
years
I know,
now.
I
Like,
understand. I understand.
I'm not a moral
I accept.
objectivist.
Yeah, I accept that. Sure, awesome. I just wanted to clear that up with.
Yeah, but I want
Alright.
to point out that plenty of arguments in favor of veganism can and are made on a subjectivist basis. But yeah, anyway, so if the question
From a
is
subjectivist basis, yeah, an argument could be made. I just wanted to clear up the fact that like we weren't trying to like apply veganism some form of like moral realist or moral objectivist criteria.
No, I'm not a moral realist. I'm not a moral objectivist.
All right. I hope your version of veganism spreads a little bit there. Because I've been hearing a lot of arguments from popularity, Avi. But
all right, I hope my branding of brand of veganism spreads too, and it is. So, hey, there you go.
Awesome. You have a great day, Avi.
All right, you too.
I do want to say, just to my knowledge, regarding this server, I think it seems to be a little bit half-half. I think there are a lot of objectivists in here, but like I think also the other half is kind of more subjectivism terms in metaethical terms. So metaethically. Okay, next person in line. Pegano Luis. Portuguese? We cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks to Avi and Barnacle and Mac for this AMA. I just have one question for Avi. So I'm a vegan animal rights activist, and I've been invited. So this is a moral dilemma I'm living right now. I've been invited to a podcast to talk about veganism, and it will have video, so it will be without masks, and because of that we have to do COVID tests beforehand. But here in my country, at least, all the cheap, accessible COVID tests have goat and chicken antibodies. So I'm wondering, how would you weigh this situation? Would you go ahead and do the tests so you could do the podcast and talk about veganism, or would you deny it and not do it?
So I'm not familiar with the specific tests that are used in your country. Does it just? I'll ask you real quick. Does your country have PCR, like PCR tests, the type of test
Yes,
that goes to the?
it has, but it's not affordable for me. It's like 100 euros to do it, and these tests
Okay.
are 3 euros.
All right. I mean, what I say. So the thing is, like with antibody tests, the antibodies required to give a positive or negative result are very, very traced. We're talking about we're talking about less than a penny contribution to animal agriculture. So it's going to be incredibly, incredibly small. So I really highly like. Here's the thing, like I suspect, I don't know the particulars of the test, so there's always a possibility I could be wrong on this. So you can, if you want, you can DM me the specific test that's being done. But what all of these generally come out to be are the topic I call like trace animal agriculture product, where whatever degree of animal agriculture you're going to be contributing to is going to be on the order of pennies. The reason this is important is because, like, at that level, you really could be making like those sort of differences in contributions to animal agriculture by, say, choosing buying a sweet potato over a legume or something. And if we want to set a standard where that's going to be a problem, why are we not going to set a standard why those choices are going to be a problem? And so I don't think those are going to be motivating to preclude you from doing your animal rights activism. So my leaning in terms of, based on everything I know now, without knowing the particulars of that study, is I think the value of your animal rights activism is probably going to outweigh the trace penny you will contribute to animal agriculture as a gatekeeper. But if you want, you could send me the particulars of the tests that are done in your country, and I can take a closer look.
Okay, thanks. I'll do that. Thank you.
Any other question?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Right. So next up we have, where are they? I'm sorry. There we go. I'm sorry?
Yo, Avi, Barnacle, how are you guys?
Good, how are you?
I'm
What's
doing
going
well.
on?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll just get right into this. So
Real quick, is this going to be a question about your debate tier?
I'll make that the last question. Okay. So just making sure your view on bivalves, you don't value them, right?
No, I don't.
Okay. And Barnacle, you share the same view?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And you guys wouldn't offer the, precaution of maybe they're sentient just because they don't have the, the neural capacity to even be considered something that's sentient, correct?
Correct. The reason for that is because I don't see any argument that gives the precautionary principle for sentience in bivalves that wouldn't equally apply to some reflex arc, like a reflex arc in a knee, or some type of ganglion neural activity, such as my enteric nervous system. By enteric nervous system, I mean the nervous system that's associated with, like, my gut, for example. And we don't typically have any moral precautionary concern with doing like a gut resection or
or a sympathectomy, where you deliberately take out some ganglia.
Yeah, or anything like that, or we don't like try to look into like how are the sentience of my enteric nervous system will feel if I eat like a sweet potato versus a carrot or things like that. If we really did give like a precautionary principle, there's going to be a whole lot of things that we're going to be concerned about.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think any argument for bivalve sentience, when applied logically consistently, ends up looking just hilarious.
And yeah, just to make sure you guys still don't personally consume them, right? Or do you? I don't know.
I don't have a problem consuming them.
Okay.
I don't recall, but I wouldn't have a problem just ordering a bivalve. No, I wouldn't. Assuming, just to be clear, like assuming it wasn't like one of those like trawls that like sweep up like a whole bunch of fish with it or something like that. If it could be like grown on its own, where you're going to avoid like any bycatch concerns, where you're going to have to start thinking about there being odd order or even order predators and things like that. That's the type of situation I'm talking about. I'm not talking about where someone like sees a bunch of bivalves on the ocean floor and takes this net and just like destroys everything, including any other life forms within there.
Right. Okay.
Just to actually quickly to just add to that, I assume this feeling would be even stronger in regards to corals, because they are technically, I mean, they don't have a central nervous system, but they don't have any nerves at all, and I think they are technically considered animals in taxonomy.
Yeah, I mean, this idea of just because something is on the Animalia classification, like the idea that that's I don't know. Just to be clear, I don't know if corals. I'm actually not aware if they're classified as plants or Animalia. I was
sure
just okay. If they're yeah, that's fine. Either way, the point is, the mere classification of the kingdom Animalia doesn't. It's just not what I care about in terms of moral consideration.
Yeah, those are artificial man-made categories. I mean, there's reasons we separated things the way we did, but it doesn't mean that that's the dividing line necessarily.
All right.
So it's more like about sentientism rather than just like strictly categorically, taxonomically about animals.
Yeah, just imagine, the easy way to think, just imagine if someone took a corn plant, right? They took a piece of corn and they said, well, we changed the taxonomy. Now we consider the corn to be under the kingdom Animalia. Like, would you now say, well, we shouldn't be eating corn? Like, it's just ridiculous.
I agree with you. Yeah. Okay. So then my next is really quickly for Barnacle. So I know you're a dermatologist, correct, Avi?
I'm in a dermatology resident, actually. I'm not a board certified dermatologist.
Okay. And Barnacle, do you know what specialty you plan on pursuing?
Yeah, I'm applying into anesthesia.
Okay, cool. And then okay, so Avi, right? You're debating. Okay, when did you start?
Oh, it's been a long time, my dude. Probably around early teenage years, maybe 14, 15.
Like in some school debates, or how'd you start?
Not school debates. It's been like it wasn't like an organized school debate or anything like that. It was just debating theologians, basically. When I started having doubts in religion, the response was to have me debate various theologians to convince me of
that backfired.
Yeah. So that's how I started, and for a good amount of time, that's like how I got into like learning about philosophy, learning about logic, learning about yeah.
And when do you think you started to you could call yourself above average or fairly good at it? Around when?
Oh, I don't know.
Don't be modest. Don't be modest.
I was born with this.
Okay.
I came out of the womb superior to everyone in debate. Like I don't know, man.
All right, fair enough. And I'm assuming Barnacle, you don't do too much debate.
I don't know.
Okay. So then I guess I just have some quick questions. So, what led you to threshold deontology? And just to make sure before you answer that, Barnacle, do you share the position of threshold deontology?
I do, but I'm really kind of new to philosophy, so you're not gonna like really have a very satisfying conversation with me about it.
Yeah, no. Main reasons why you adopted that, Avi.
Yeah. So to answer the first question was how I came to it. So I was basically, when I was in the Ask Yourself Discord, before I went vegan, actually, I was trying to figure out my values after being met with vegan debates, and I was just really trying to think about the things that I care about. And I realized that I don't have just one concern. There are multiple things that I value. So it really just came back to the trolley problem, just to map out what my values were. Well, would I kill one to save 5? No, I think that's actually a terrible thing to do. But if you scaled up the other end, eventually I'll change my answer.
Yeah, one of my questions was actually the trolley problem, so you just answered it. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And so I would give, and I think the only real consistent way you can give with operating with principles, that is, that you could give two different answers like that to the trolley problem is if you have certain different values. If you simultaneously value different things, which is fine. And I didn't even know it was called threshold deontology until like years later. So I came to I just came to this view I had on my own. I ended up convincing Isaac of it. And only later did we learn that this was actually a view that was published in the literature, which is great. You get to come up with a view, think it out, and then realize, hey, look, it's not just this idiosyncratic thing that's yourself. There are actual professional philosophers that came to this view as well. So even better. And then cool. we actually have a name for the view, which is recognized in the literature, so it's even better. Yeah.
Cool. I'm just going to end this off with think about the rating. Next time we talk, I want the answer. 1 to 10. 1 to 10. Okay. You have a good one, and you too, Barnacle.
All right. Take care.
You too. Take care.
Okay. Right, next person.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me on the stage, and thank you for Dr. Avi and Barnacle for doing this AMA. I was wondering if I heard earlier that you do not agree with Dr. McDougall. So I was wondering what kind of diet do you think is ideal for maintaining good health and preventing diseases?
All right, so real quick, when I say I don't agree with Dr. McDougall, it doesn't mean I think that like his diet is bad or something,
okay.
Or at least necessarily bad. I disagree with Dr. McDougall on the statements he makes about modern medicine, and how he just has certain ways of talking that disparage people from taking medicine, as opposed to getting off of their like medicines even though they're still indicated, and in favor of some diet that he thinks is going to be this magical cure and shit. So yeah, I mean, I think Dr. McDougall is a motivator. Also, I don't agree that the only healthy way to do this is a low fat diet. So in terms of what's going to be the ideal vegan diet, I don't know. It's probably different for different people. I have no idea. But whatever the evidence that we have available now doesn't suggest that there's probably not going to be much of a difference between, on average, between a moderate fat vegan diet versus a low fat vegan diet. Like I don't think there's going to be much difference in outcomes there.
So, normal healthy person, probably some pounds over, and want to prevent any further diseases and come back to normal weight or below weight, which I assume BMI 22 or below. So that would be a moderate fat vegan diet. Whole food plant-based?
Well, I mean, it depends. You could do it either way. I mean, like, here's the thing: the goals, whatever goals people have for macronutrients, for like whether you're going to be high carb or low fat or low fat high carb. Whether you're going to be high in the carbs or low in the carbs, high in the fat or low in the fat. For most of the goals people have, it's really not going to matter. You can lose weight whether you are high carb. You can lose weight whether you're low carb. You can build muscle on high carb. You can build muscle on low carb. So long as you're not going so low fat that you're preventing fat soluble vitamins, you can achieve all of your goals through these various different macronutrient proportions.
Okay.
I'd say
so maybe.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'd say that the best. So yeah, there are different range of different macronutrient like kind of ratios that you could take on a vegan diet and have them all be perfectly healthy. So long as it's appropriately planned and you can plan to whatever your goals are. So if you want to, start bulking, like start getting muscle, you could do a, calorie excess. You can do it in you could do a calorie deficit if you want to lose weight. That's no problem. The real key here really is just adherence. And this is the like just pick a diet that is appropriately planned, achieves the goals that you want to, and that you can adhere to. Really, that's it.
Okay. My
And please
goal
take your
was
B12 supplement.
okay. Okay. Yeah. My goal was to not target bulking or losing weight or something like that, but long term avoid diseases, and that's the goal. To as a long term person, I would like to live more and maintain the quality of life that I have right now by not getting diseases eventually. So, is there any specific suggestion for that? I'd appreciate it.
Sorry, can you just repeat those goals again?
The goal was to have no diseases in long term, and or less risk of diseases, live a long life, and have the quality of life maintained, good quality of life maintained throughout the life. That's what the goal is, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really much of a secret. The basic, a lot of this is just going to be coming about through execution, not through some secret. So have a well balanced diet. Take your B12 supplement. Exercise. Get a good sleep. The general bare bones basics are usually the things that are going to make the most difference. And it's not going to come down to any like secret some monk in the Himalayas is going to have for long life and health. Really, this is just going to come down to like basic health advice and execution.
So one follow-up question on that, probably the last. So when you say balanced diet, is that a whole food vegan, whole food plant-based diet, or a Mediterranean diet, or
you can do it. You can do it with look, for ethical reasons, I'll recommend a plant-based diet. I'll recommend a vegan diet.
Sure.
If you're asking, can you do it through a Mediterranean diet? Yeah, you absolutely can. If your goal is not to be ethical and just to at least ethical in my view, and just to live a long life, yeah, you could do that through a Mediterranean diet. You could do it through a vegetarian diet.
No, I mean Mediterranean vegan diet. That's what I meant. Obviously.
Oh, I see. Oh, I sorry, I misheard you. I heard Mediterranean instead of vegetarian. Sorry. Yeah, you can do it through either of those. Look, there are various diets that are in the contenders for like optimality. Vegan diet is one of them. Pesca vegetarian is another one. Mediterranean diet is another one. I think they're very, very similar in terms of their health outcomes. I think they're very, very different in terms of their ethical status.
Yeah, don't hurt the cows. You can have good health without hurting the cows or any other.
Yeah, that is definitely a goal. But I was wondering, between all the diets that we hear about, which can be veganized, like Mediterranean vegan diet, or normal vegan diet, like or Oreo and soda diet, or a whole food plant-based diet. So that's why I was confused on which might be the ideal. But what I'm hearing is all of them might work if they are done in a balanced way.
Yeah, and one that you can adhere to. That's pretty important.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, all of you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and by the way, with I think you mentioned like Whole Foods or something. With Whole Foods versus processed foods, it's a heuristic, not a law. So like okay, technically tofu is a processed food, right? But we still generally consider it healthy, right? So and there's also a lot of myths about like vegetable oils, or seed oils. Those are also fine. Despite misinformation about that. So I don't think you have to. It's all about the particulars of a food and whether that food is healthy or not. It's never about, like, for example, with fat. you may see a lot of people that say, oh yeah, all fat is bad. It's like, no, well, we know now that like it's generally you want to limit certain types of fat to not get over some threshold, right? So for heart disease, you want to generally be focusing on monounsaturated, polyunsaturated fatty acids rather than upping your saturated fatty acid intake and whatnot. So it's hard to present everything in sort of laws. There's generally like a sort of optimal space of diets that can work. It's like not just one. We mentioned a lot of different diets, and if they're in that sweet spot, they can hit it. But just pick the one that you like, that you will adhere to, and that stays within guidelines of not, like, for example, consuming too much saturated fatty acid, consuming enough fiber, etc. So that's what I'd say.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much, guys. Have a nice day.
You
too.
All right. I think I have a question from the tech channel. Sorry for this question, but is it vegan to eat carnists?
No, I don't. Well, okay, so I'll answer this question in both in principle and in a vacuum. So in a vacuum, it's going to be, my answer is going to be no different than eating any predator in a vacuum. However, in the real world, it's not going to be vegan. There's going to be a couple of reasons why. Vegan is just a representation of my moral values in terms of what we eat. If we do that, for example, we're going to destroy the vegan movement. If we do that, we're going to prevent a lot of other people from going vegan. If we do that, we're going to go to jail. If we do that, we're et cetera, et cetera. So I think it would be highly unethical to eat non-vegans in the world we live in. Yeah.
It's also not good for you to eat people. You can get prions, so don't do it.
Okay. Next person, Chase.
Not to mention, I'll just add to that question. Like, if we were to start doing that, that probably would be the surest way to continue a perpetual animal agriculture. With the end of the vegan movement.
Right. Chase, your mic's lighting up, but we don't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you. You're perpetually green. Very vegan, but
Okay. Well, Chase is trying again. You got the invite?
Try again.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Cool. Hey, everybody. Thanks, Avi, for all your activism. Appreciate all that. We're learning a lot from both y'all. Want to say that I'm still trying to figure out if I'm a moral subjectivist or a moral objectivist. I understand what you were saying earlier, that you're a moral subjectivist. I'm wondering if somebody was going to argue from moral objectivism about animal rights, what do you think their best tactic would be to do that? Or do you think they should just totally abandon it altogether? And like,
yeah,
by moral,
I don't know. I look. I'll be honest with you. Any like real exploration into someone saying they think morality is objective has either come down to me thinking what they're saying is either trivially false, or me like getting to a point where I don't even understand what the hell they're saying. So I'm not saying that won't, like, if your goal is to convince people, maybe talking, maybe saying things that I find gibberish will convince other people. Maybe it won't. I don't know. That's an empirical question. But I personally have not found any argument for moral objectivism convincing, or any argument that hinges on the truth of moral objectivism to be convincing. And either that, or I just have, or the argument or the position itself just sounded like gibberish, depending on how it's presented. So I don't hold a lot of stock in any arguments that hinge on moral objectivism.
Okay, I guess just because like a lot of people have a natural inclination to think that certain super violent acts towards innocent individuals is just like objectively wrong, and that there's no way to just because you think it's okay to abuse a child doesn't mean you're right, and that kind of thing. And like as soon as you become the victim, you realize what an injustice it is, and by a moral objectivity, like I'm not saying like of a god or anything like this, but maybe just that it's in coherence with rationality and logic, like operates in the same way that logic does, that just because two people have
really clear, when I say moral objectivism, I'm talking about something that's mind external, that I'm talking about external normative reasons.
Okay,
so
what
if
if we
they
were
try to cash go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, what if we were to define moral objectivity as existing within the minds of moral agents, but applicable to all moral agents, regardless of differing subjective perspectives?
I mean, I just don't regardless of different subjective perspectives. So it's something that is within the mind, but is true for all people, regardless of what's within the mind.
Yeah, kind of like logic, how logic operates, right?
Right. Well, that's just going to be a contradiction. I mean, if something is because if it's within the mind and you're saying it's true regardless of all things within the mind, then all things within the mind includes the thing that you're trying to say is true. We could actually derive a contradiction from that, because that thing could be false. So that's just going to be an incoherent framing of moral objectivism.
Okay,
you see
might
what I
be
mean?
right.
You see what I mean when I say like, because here's the thing: like we can try and we can take the AMA time up and we can like try to find ways to make objectivism coherent. But this is what I mean when I say when people present their arguments as objective, as moral objectivism, they either run into like saying something that I'm just going to say, well, that's just trivially false, or something that either is just incoherent. In this case, something that entails a contradiction.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have to spend any more time on that. I need to think about it anyways. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Then another question I have is like, what do you think are some of the most effective forms of activism for animal rights? We got stuff like what we're doing right now, just having conversations with people, ideally with a crowd watching, so that multiple people learn. We've got stuff like showing slaughterhouse videos in public on a laptop. We got stuff like mass protests and locking down slaughterhouses and getting arrested. We got stuff like illegally going into factory farms or slaughterhouses and rescuing the animals, as many as we can. We got stuff like lobbying politicians to change the laws to like ban slaughterhouses. We recently outlawed the sale of fur in the entire state of California. Because of the animal cruelty, but those are just a few things. Creating more consumer products that make veganism more accessible and affordable and profitable.
Okay, so if you're talking about activism specifically, so I mean there are plenty of ways to encourage people to go vegan. One of which is a non-activist way, which is just to make vegan food more accessible. But if you're talking about activism, that's an area where there's a lot of data lacking in terms of which form of activism is most effective in convincing the most amount of people. I don't think we know the answer to that. My suspicion is going to be that there's going to be like a place for all, like a whole bunch of different forms of activism, because I think different people may respond to different things. The one thing I will say though, and this is very important for anyone listening, there's a very weird habit of people who go to others and try to assume that they know the best and most effective form of activism to make people vegan. And they'll like use that as some really cringy critique of how you're doing vegan activism. So to all of those people, like either produce data or just go fuck yourself, honestly. There's not much more to say. So that's number one. Number two, there's also it's just really weird how they would assume that that's your primary goal at all points in time. So I don't think we know the answer to that. In terms of non-activism, I do suspect, I have a very strong intuition that things like lab-made meat and technology to produce meat and animal products, in quote unquote animal products, in more cheap and affordable ways, that's going to be very, very helpful in the world going vegan. Just if we could get to the point where we make animal products just straight up obsolete, even regardless of changing, we would be able to get people to go vegan without even changing their ethics. So if we get to the point where farming an animal for meat looks as stupid as taking a horse to travel from New York City to New Jersey, or Boston or something, when you could just do it with a car or a plane.
Yeah.
It's going to be something like that. That's going to be very helpful. But
Yeah,
just
I guess
never, without data, just don't pretend like, please don't be one of those people who makes some sort of real cringy comment being like, oh, why are you debating this way? Like, if you just did this, you would convince a whole lot more people to go vegan. Like, holy shit, just shut. Like, honestly, that's just super.
Yeah, I
cringy.
hear you. Yeah, I agree that like there's many ways to help animals, and it may be true that some ways are more effective than others, but that doesn't mean that those less effective ways are not effective at all. And so we should be inclusive for all different types of activists while even promoting our own favorite form of activism. We don't need to
It
discourage
also
other.
it also may not be most effective depending on the crowd you're talking to. Like, you may be talking to a certain crowd where it's far, and also just to the point where even if there are some forms of activism that are more effective than others, you don't actually know which one is which. Like, it could just be that the form of activism you're criticizing, the data could just come out to be that form of activism actually on average is more effective. And it turns out that your form of activism that you think is right, that turns out to be just not that effective at all. Maybe only slightly effective.
Yeah, so the last thing I'll just say, I guess, is that the animal rights movement is different than many other social justice movements, but there are, of course, a lot of similarities too. And so I think it is important to study other social justice movements to see what kind of tactics they used to accomplish their goals. And sometimes it's a combination of tactics, so like with the Montgomery Bus Boycott that was inspired by the solo protest by Rosa Parks during the civil rights movement in 1956. This deprived the government in Alabama of hundreds of thousands of dollars that it had been making from selling bus tickets, which is equivalent to millions of dollars today. And 40,000 activists and everyday people chose to carpool, walk, or ride a bike instead of taking the bus. And this forced the city transit system into serious economic distress. And this activism gained international media coverage. And after just 381 days of boycotting, the Supreme Court ruled that the racial segregation in Alabama's buses was unconstitutional. And so collective consumer boycotts can work in connection with mass protests and political lobbying to create widespread social change and new laws.
Oh, look, I completely agree that it's not a dichotomy. Like, there's multiple different ways you can simultaneously do activism. Like, if that's the point.
Yeah, cool. All right. And then I don't know if you guys want to talk about like plants feeling pain and stuff like that. Might be good for us to hear like how doctors explain, a nervous system and a brain and stuff. But yeah, I'll go ahead.
I think if you have any epistemic standard that includes plants feeling pain, I think it's just going to be. Look, I can't disprove that. I also can't disprove panpsychism, but I think it's just ridiculous. Like, they don't have a brain, they don't have a centralized nervous system, which is what a brain is. There's no it's just they're also like non-motile. So even if there was some pain they were feeling, that there wouldn't be any evolutionary reason for them to do anything about it.
So one thing to think about is actually being able to be conscious and be able to feel pain is actually really like costly from an energy perspective. So if an animal or a plant doesn't need it, they're not going to evolve it. So anything that doesn't move, I would be more skeptical about whether or not it's sentient. It's probably not.
All right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate your help.
Thank you for your questions. All right. Actually, I wanted to quickly say a couple things. I think that what you might have been referring to, I'm not sure how it works with subjectivism, but I think it's like more notions of like properties of morals, like whether they apply universally or not. And maybe you think it's called, I think someone mentioned chat, like it's called like absolutism or something. I might be just completely saying something that doesn't make sense, but And
I mean, I just want to point out that there's a difference between objectivity and universality.
Yeah.
You could have something that's so okay, all right, cool.
Yeah, I thought I wasn't sure whether they might have just meant that, right? Not referring to objectivity, but referring to universality. So
Yeah, I mean that's also going to be like universality. I take it to be there's like degrees of it because I'm not sure if anything's like 100% universal. Maybe there is, but it's going to be like when you say moral objectivity, like that just demonstrating that something is universal is not going to be. It's not going to demonstrate that it's objective.
okay, and also yeah, I think like the personally arguments that come from what the most effective outreach is seem like they're like big they're empirical claims which would require like rigorous empirical evidence, right?
Yeah, it's just hilarious that people just make these like weird claims to criticize other people's activism with not a shred of evidence with so much confidence. When it's really not only is there no evidence, but it's a hard question to answer even with like the tools we
Even with
have.
data. Yeah.
Like even with data, it would probably move the needle very, very low because there's just so little common domain knowledge to like have a prior in one way or another for various commonly used forms. It's just really, really weird.
Like at least I haven't read into studies. Maybe perhaps anyone here has, but it's like I think there are studies though on like, oh, if you act more like the person, like you're more so like you have similar clothes or you act the same, that they're more likely to do said action or agree with you. And I think people might try and pull those kind of studies. I'm not sure if you have like opinions on that, perhaps.
I'd have to see before I can't give an opinion without actually reading the study in question.
Yeah, this is something we actually we're trying to look into. So like in medicine, there's a way like we try to implement on an individual level, try to implement behavior change. One of the favorites is the trans theoretical model. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but basically it's about like identifying what stage of change people are in. So there's people who are pre-contemplative who don't even think they're doing anything wrong. Then there's contemplative where they know that like they need to make a change, but they're not ready to do it. There's preparation, there's action, etc. At different stages, you want to interact with people differently. And this has been found to work like, okay, I guess. And I mean, like, yeah, again, the data is not strong for anything, it seems, but it works for things like smoking cessation or getting people to adopt a healthier diet. But that doesn't mean that it's going to work for getting someone to go vegan. And again, that's just going to work on an individual level if it does work.
Yeah, this would be really interesting if we could actually get research on this. This would be really interesting, especially if like a well-conducted study. Also, actually, on the last note, and then I'll bring the next person on. Like, for example, there are videos of, for example, fur shaming, and it's an interesting question because normally you would think, like yelling at someone or doing X, Y, Z. At least a lot of people have intuition that that perhaps might not be very conducive to behavior change. But if like a video like that goes viral, it would really sort of like bring the discussion to the table. So like one thing is, for example, having a teacher, which a lot of people often really criticize, but also like a lot of the people that have joined this server have joined because of her and have gone vegan because like the veganism was brought up and now they've gone here. So it's really like hard to measure what action really how it affects, because you could you could be really bad with the people you're engaging with, but then you're also bringing it to the table and then they're going to talk to other people, which is really hard to like sort of calculate the whole utility aspect, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember.
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, yeah. Change for most people doesn't happen like in one day, in 30 seconds or whatever. It's a process. And I think one of the best things you can do that's really easy is to just, keep in contact with your non-vegan friends and family, and still be a part of their lives, because every time they see you, every time you guys get lunch, they're going to see you eating vegan food, and you can bring it up in conversation. And if you just keep reminding them of it, it'll eventually possibly have an effect.
To be clear, I wouldn't recommend telling people that that they should go vegan or they're not a good person when they're literally eating like a steak. Doesn't sound like it's productive. But I mean, I don't have empirical data to back that up, so
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Maybe I would. I have no idea. Look, here's the point. Look, sometimes here's the thing. And this is actually something that I've gotten from people who have done quite a bit of activism. And yes, this is very low tier on the evidence hierarchy. It's just a bunch of anecdotes. But it's interesting how we have all these intuitions about you shouldn't talk this strongly, you shouldn't talk this way, you shouldn't tell them they're a bad person if you don't get or anything like that. But there are so many times where people from AV, for example, have done that, and people have come back to them and saying hey, listen, I just want to thank you for being that harsh and real with me, because if you hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't have gone vegan. And it really even though I was probably so against you in the moment, that's what I took back with me and thought about. So I've come to the point where I just have no clue what to this empirical question. No, right. There are certain things that I would say probably are not, for example, just screeching incoherently. I don't think that's going to be a good form of activism. So there are certain things where I have this prior domain knowledge that it's probably not going to work. But there's a whole bunch of different ranges of legitimate, commonly formed forms of activism, and I have no idea, and I don't think anyone does either, whether to infer what's going to convert more people than not.
My point wasn't to say that
really quick. I just want to say also I don't know if you all share this intuition, but I really have as well anecdotally that it just really just the answer of it's just very there's a huge variety. It really depends on the person and situation. I'm not sure if y'all would share that feeling.
Yeah, and my point was if they're literally in the middle of eating a steak, then chatting them about it. I was half joking, and you're right. I don't actually know if that's effective vegan advocacy or not to do that. So I was mainly joking, but you can people say, oh, don't shame other people. You could call shaming holding people accountable. Again, we don't actually have an idea. Just wanted to make it clear that I was joking mostly.
I think you mean you should use the word cow flesh more.
Yeah. Why are you eating cow flesh in front of me?
So right, legume supremacy. Mona B, come on stage.
Hi guys.
Actually, sorry, really quickly before you go, I'm so sorry. We have been going for a while. So whenever either of you are have to go or are tired, feel free to start ending this. But if we can continue, then let's continue.
Yeah, we can. I'm good.
I'm fine.
Continue.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so I just got a quick question. So you're all speaking of activism anyway, so this kind of fits in nicely. I was wondering if you guys think that vegans specifically have some sort of moral obligation to live a healthy lifestyle. For example, are we obligated to take our vitamin B12 so we don't get deficient? What are your thoughts?
So I think in terms of obligations, I think it to the extent that you care about having a life, and care about having a healthy life, you absolutely should take your vitamins. In terms of a moral obligation, if I guess that's just going to depend on the particulars. If there are enough vegans just letting their health go to the crap, then if the concern is that a lot of people are going to look at vegans and be like, oh well, look what happens. Why would I go vegan? If we allow all of those stipulations to go through, then yeah, I mean, it could be a good reason to have vegans live healthy, more healthy lives. But if the idea is like we have this obligation to like, neurotically, have any, nitpick everything we choose on the menu. First of all, no, I don't think that's the case, and I don't think we have that obligation. I'm also not convinced that would actually help more people go vegan. People may look at us and be like, "Oh, well, look at these neurotic vegans." Like, why would I want to be part of a movement like that? Like, where I have to scrutinize every little meal I eat? Like, yeah. So, I don't know. Right now, As of now, I don't see there's any reason to like have a vegan like go for this like optimal like health thing. Like, if a vegan wants to be vegan for ethical reasons and they want to just live their life normally, that's totally fine.
Okay, so just to clarify, I'm not talking about, as you said, like obsessing about health and wanting to optimize every single part of your life, because honestly, like that doesn't even sound like a healthy thing to do. But I mean, just like like kind of watching what you eat, taking your supplements, those kinds of things, and not just eating fries and chocolate pudding and stuff like that.
And you're asking about a moral obligation?
Yes, it's basically a little bit of what you mentioned, that if you are a vegan and are in like really bad health or really bad shape, then that can be actually attributed to the way that you're eating. That people obviously might say, "Oh, like I know a vegan who is in a horrible shape, and that's the reason why I don't want to do it." Maybe not the sole reason, but that would be contributing to them basically
Vegans are
not changing anything.
Other boys.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess if all the empirical things like came to, if all the stars aligned and it really was the case that if you ate an unhealthy vegan diet and you had a problem from it, which you would be more likely to do, and if that would result in a whole bunch of less people going vegan, at some threshold, I would say sure. I'm just not convinced that those things are actually in place. I'm not convinced that if you eat an unhealthy vegan diet, then this like whole bunch of extra suffering is going to happen, or this whole bunch of aside from you, that is. I'm really not convinced that like people actually make or break their decisions by some vegan who just ate French fries. Like I don't think at least not to that degree. I don't think there's going to be this whole bunch of people that are going to be influenced like that. But if it was true, if you could show that it's true, then yeah, there may be some stronger ethical reason to do that.
I mean, I guess it depends on the severity of the case. So, for example, if you know someone who had a really, really horrible B12 deficiency from being vegan, and they had to go to the hospital and had like permanent nerve damage, that would probably be a reason for you to basically stay away as far as possible from it. So I think, yeah, it would depend on the severity. But I think anecdotes and the people that we know have a lot more influence on them than like actual data that we could present.
Well, just to be real clear, if someone is not taking their B12 because they want to have the consequences, like let's just say someone's not taking the B12 because they like, oh, I actually want to find myself in the hospital with like nerve degeneration and everything like that. Would they have some moral obligation to not do that? I guess that in that case they would, but because you're wasting the time of a whole bunch of other people for stupid things. But like this idea that I guess I'm just really not convinced that like B12 deficiencies that are so obviously not a non-issue to people doing the basics are really going to prevent people from going vegan. What I do think is a moral obligation is to not spread misinformation, to be like, oh, like, well, this is what you don't need to take a B12 supplement, or normalizing that kind of behavior. But just in and of itself, I really would need to be presented for a reason why it would be a moral obligation. I'm just not seeing it.
Moral virtue.
I see the speculate. I understand what the speculations are. I understand, like, we can speculate that this will happen, but I'm just not. Yeah, I'm just not convinced on the strength of the speculation.
I mean, I guess I think it's kind of hard because usually the reason why people are not vegan, or like they might think about it but they actually won't do it, is usually a blend of different reasons. So I don't think that like knowing vegans who are in bad health is like actually the one argument or the one thing that is preventing people from actually doing it, but it's more so
I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
Yeah, like that it's another factor coming in, and especially when it comes to, I don't know, like when it comes to, for example, parents feeding their baby an inadequate vegan diet.
Okay, that's different. Okay, that's wait. Before, I'm sorry, I have to stop you. Okay. That's going to be very, very different. So because that I do think is a moral obligation, right? When you have an obligation to provide and take care of someone, you actually do have an obligation to not give them like garbage to eat, right? That's different. I'm talking about decisions you make for yourself, not decisions you make for your children. So that I'm going to say yes, I do agree that anyone who gives, withholds a B12 supplement for their vegan child, I think that's child abuse. So yeah, that for sure is going to be a moral obligation in my view. But I'm not talking about that kind of situation. I'm talking about a situation where just someone just wants they want to be vegan for ethical reasons, and they just want to live an unhealthy life because that's what the life they enjoy. Do they have an ethical obligation to not do that? At this point, I'm not convinced that it's an ethical obligation to not do that. The reason is because I just haven't seen any reason to believe that it is. And I know there's some troll accounts that will try to nitpick any like vegan deterioration troll accounts or whatnot. But again, like I've never met someone who like was not just turned on it, but was significantly influenced by that type of content, where someone was just like, unless they're even really stupid people, like even just complete morons, people I would consider like legitimately like very unintelligent people, even those people, I've never seen them cite like those kind of troll accounts for being a substantial part of the reason, not even like the reason, but even a part of the reason why they went vegan or why they went from vegan to non-vegan or whatnot. I've heard a lot of cases where it's due to their personal experience, that I've heard, but I've never seen someone been like, well, I decided not to go, or I decided to go back from being vegan because, I watched vegan deterioration or something like that.
Another thing I would say, what I've noticed with those troll accounts is I feel like no matter what you look like, if they know you're vegan, they're going to criticize your appearance. Someone might find a picture of me from 10 years ago and say it was from 1 year ago and be like, oh, look what's happened to her. I feel like I could live the healthiest life and look as good as I possibly could, and people are still going to say that I look pale and anemic when I'm actually just pasty,
Yeah.
They'll edit if necessary. They'll edit you to look unhealthy. Like they'll do whatever. Like these are their accounts that, like, if that's the concern. I look. The bottom line is I haven't seen any reason to think that there's going to be some sort of good that's going to be generated by this action, such that it will outscale, like, to the point of meeting the threshold such that it's no longer supererogatory, but now it's obligatory. That's the way of saying it. So you could do good things that are supererogatory, like you can give charity. That's going to do, assuming that'll do better things in the world. But we typically don't say that that's an obligatory action. We recognize it as a supererogatory action. And for vegans to be healthier, I know, I understand, but I think most people don't consider that to be obligatory.
Yeah.
Maybe some people do. I certainly don't. If the question is indexed to me, I certainly don't consider that to be obligatory. I consider that to be supererogatory. And what's going to boil down to me is a case to be made for living a healthy life as a vegan is going to not just be supererogatory, because I'll agree it's supererogatory. It's better if you do that. But if the question is it obligatory as opposed to supererogatory, right now I don't think so.
Actually, Avi, I thought of something. I want to know what you think. So I'm not talking about like typical people, but so say, I'm trying to phrase this. So something like not taking your B12, that might not change anyone or like cause anyone to say like, I'm not going to go vegan because that person developed a B12 deficiency. But say from like a doctor's perspective, and a doctor comes and they keep seeing these vegans who are like underweight or have this deficiency or that deficiency and all these problems, that's going to like bias their opinions. And I think one of the things that I've been struggling with is like making the medical community more vegan friendly. Do you think that having those deficiencies and being unhealthy is going to slow that down?
For vegans not taking a B12 supplement, probably would. But if for vegans just living an unhealthy life, just eating Oreos and French fries, I don't think that's gonna I don't think that's going to fall into that category at all. I think there are plenty of people who eat French fries, and it's not going to be anything unique to veganism. It's not. I don't think it's going to bias. If a doctor is met with a patient who eats too many French fries, I don't think that doctor is going to form the conclusion that this is because of veganism.
Right, but would you say it's obligatory then to like take your B12 supplement?
Based on that speculation, I wouldn't be convinced of that. Yeah, I mean, maybe it turns out to be the case, maybe not. But again, it's just very, very speculative, and I like, I don't know. It just seems to be relying on a lot of things that that if empirically true, maybe I could grant that, but I have very low credence in away from agnosticism with respect to its empirical truth.
What about the fact that, okay, maybe like this is kind of half joke, but you know that if you're not taking your B12 supplement, basically what you're doing is causing unnecessary suffering. I mean, it's for yourself, but maybe for your loved ones as well, if you're putting yourself in the hospital. So you could also try to look at it from that perspective.
Oh, okay. No, so if the question is, well, do you have an obligation to be healthy, because if you're unhealthy, like there's going to be all your loved ones will suffer. I guess if there were to a certain at some threshold, it would be go from supererogatory to obligatory. We typically, but I think I'm not sure if that threshold is met though. Like I think there are a lot of people that are unhealthy, whether vegan or not, and their family doesn't like it. They feel bad about it. People typically don't go and they'd be like, well, you're overweight, you're obese. You have a moral obligation to not be obese because your family doesn't like it. Would it be better? Would it be supererogatory? Yeah, I agree. I just don't see the obligation. Like there are many. Look, my family doesn't like me for. I'm sure they don't like a number of things about me. Being vegan, being one of them. Some of them are very, like they would much prefer it if I were non-vegan. I guess you can say there are countervailing reasons, but yeah, I don't know. And the suffering of oneself, like I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't consider it an obligation to prevent the suffering of yourself if you like know that and realize that and just want to inflict that on yourself. Like, yeah, I'm just not seeing it. I agree on the supererogatory part. I do. I'm just not seeing the obligatory.
I would just say that I had to survive on French fries once for a whole week because of medicine. So a lot to study.
I can relate.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know if you still have more questions about this issue. Actually, I want to ask you something. Or do you have still something?
I just want to like say one more thing. It's like I asked the question, but that does not mean that I actually agree with it. I just thought it might be an interesting thing to bring up, just to make sure.
Ask.
No, that was the thing that I wanted to
No,
say.
she's just saying that
like,
the question she posited, she doesn't necessarily take that position.
Oh, okay, right.
That's all.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions?
No, not really.
So I was actually going to ask you, since if I'm not mistaken, you're also a medical student. Actually, I think we have 3 medical students on the podium. Do you remember my first question that I asked here, like the very first?
The one about having to do non-vegan
Yeah.
things in order to
Yeah.
study.
Yeah. What have you had to do something non-vegan in, or like were obligated to do in medical school?
I
That
mean,
typically would be non-vegan.
Okay, so I mean, one thing would be that I actually don't know in the biochemistry practicals that we had to do if some of the enzymes and stuff that we used were animal based. I actually didn't ask, but to be honest, they were like really, really small quantities, and I think most likely most of them were probably made by bacteria. Another thing that was like that actually was non-vegan is that we had a physiology practical in which we used, I think it was like rat's uterus and some muscle fiber cells of a frog leg that we applied electrical currents to. It was just like a tiny piece of tissue, but nonetheless we used it. So I guess that would count as non-vegan. But to be honest, since it was such a small thing, and I was only one student of like 20, or like even more, to use like the same tissue, I didn't do anything personally to the tissue, like the tutors that we had applied the electrical current, so I didn't think that it would be very practical to not attend the lecture and basically have to. I'm thinking I would probably have to sue the university to stay in med school and to get further and to write the first state exam and stuff like that. So I don't think that was really worth it.
It would be a good idea
Yeah.
to have veganism under a protected class. Like we could, wouldn't be have to forced to do non-vegan things in society.
And I mean, I know for
Not sure
one
what
of
y'all think
the
about that.
I know for one of the experiments they actually changed using live tissue to a computer simulation. So that's actually something that already happened. But yeah, and I'm to be honest, I'm not sure. As far as I know, the tissue that they used was from animals that were used for like different lab testing in the universities. So it sounds horrible, but it was basically recycling animals that would have gone to the bin otherwise. So yeah, but I mean, as far as vegans being a protected class go, I guess like I'm not really sure about the legal implications here where I live.
Maybe I'm misusing that word too. I have no clue. Maybe Avi or Barnacle has have a comment on that. Or Mock.
Sorry, what's
Definitely
the question?
Yeah, so it seems to be though that like perhaps in some countries, I'm not sure, like, or in society, we might be in situations where we'd be obligated to perhaps do something non-vegan because of either work or school, university. I'm not sure if like protected class would be the right word, but basically that vegans wouldn't have to be obligated to do said action that they ethically disagree with.
Yeah, so there is this thing that there is this question that comes up. It's like if you're in a situation and the situation demands you to do something non-vegan, but like you're not going to be able to. There's going to be no way you're going to be able to just live your life by doing that. The idea is just if you impose that standard on all vegans, you wouldn't have a vegan community at all. You wouldn't have a vegan movement at all, and then what you're left with is just going to be perpetual animal agriculture. So
you would support
if it's one of those
legally
what?
If
yeah,
vegans
like
are
having vegans under like sort of protected class or something. I don't know.
Oh yes. No, of course. If a vegan, there are certain things where there's easy alternatives. I wouldn't force. Yeah, I would support like legally making it such that vegans don't have to do X, Y, Z if there's like an easy way to get the same job done using vegan means or something. Yeah, sure.
Would anyone actually still want to comment on something?
I mean, I think we have some. I don't know how it's exactly phrased, but it's basically that you can't be discriminated against based on your religion or your worldview or ethical moral code. So basically, veganism would fall under that. But then on the other hand, it's a very like unprecise term, because basically anyone could say that anything is that they reject things based on their personal ethics. So I think the problem is that why would veganism, like precisely veganism, be protected as a class and not other worldviews? Because like objectively our community is very, very small, and do we protect every other worldview that 1% of the population holds, like by a law? So I guess it has some practical difficulties if you were to actually implement it.
Okay. I'm not sure if anyone still wants to comment something. Otherwise, I'll bring up the next person. Okay.
Hold on. Before we bring up the next person,
I just want to make a comment. Wait, hold on. Stop. Wait. There's this really like low level like response to something I said that I just wanted you to address about like correcting someone's like activism. So one like really like silly thing that a response someone might bring is be like, well, you should just see how it works, how it turns out. Like you should just see how the other person's reacting, and you should adjust accordingly. So like you should, if you see someone performing activism on someone else, do like engaging in vegan activism, and they seem to be responding favorably, but then they seem to be responding unfavorably, like you should just, then you could tell them to adjust their activism. That's just not like, that's also just the same ridiculous speculation. Again, like the problem is you don't know what working or not working looks like. Assuming that activism is working by looking at the response of someone and looking at it as favorable, that that does not mean that it's encouraging them to be vegan. In fact, sometimes what encourages them to be vegan are like unfriendly responses, or responses that don't look favorable. And many times it's the case that what responses may seem to be favorable, like agreement and things like that, turn out to be this kind of lip service, or the kind of like, Mike Israel style, where it's just like, hey, I agree with this, that makes a lot of sense, but I'm still not going to be vegan, and here are my reasons, yada yada yada. Whereas someone who, really fights back and really like, acts hostily, can come back to you later and be like, oh, well, actually, I thought about that. That's what really stuck in my mind, and I'm going to be vegan. So, again, it's still my position for anyone listening, and just if there's one thing to take away from this AMA, it's going to be that it is super, super cringe without data for you to try and give all of these, in almost all cases, for you to think that you're the person who's giving constructive criticism on someone else's activism for the purpose of this empirical question of convincing the most amount of people. Just super cringe. Very few exceptions to this. And this idea that you're going to like adjust depending on the response, also pretty silly.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would agree. Actually, for me, it was Gary Yourofsky's greatest speech ever that turned me vegan a couple of years ago. I don't agree, obviously, with everything he says. He's a very misanthropic person, but I can't deny the fact that he was actually the one who basically did the last part in turning me vegan. So yeah, and he's very, very aggressive.
Yeah. Okay.
And to the person who also is just like asking just when I say low level, just for clarity, by low level, I just mean like the kind of brain dead response that like level 0 Carnists would give. So just things that this combination of arrogance and ignorance, where someone like thinks they have this genius idea, and it's like the most basic level thing that someone with like very low cognitive abilities would be able to come up with. That's the kind of thing I mean when I say low level. Like, it's just one of the most embarrassing things you could do. So please, just like, if there's anything to take forward, don't do that. Thanks.
Okay, Mark, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, it's an unrelated question. So, but I wanted to bring it up because
I really want to bring up the next person as well. And I'm sorry, Mona, I'll have to take it from stage for now. But yeah, no, don't let that.
This one, well, this question, it's are you echoing?
I'm sorry. Sorry, go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. This question's a little facetious because we were already talking about it, but I figure it's good to discuss it in front of audience here. So, do you guys think that eating disorders veganism exacerbates existing eating disorders, or that it can cause an eating disorder of any kind? What are your opinions on the?
I see no reason to. Yeah, I see no reason to believe that on average. There's very limited data on the state of the literature. But the last time I checked on it, the point estimates were actually in the opposite direction. Again, I wouldn't hang my hat on anything on the topic specifically of eating disorders. What I can say is the limited data on mental disorders in general, not just eating disorders, seems to indicate that the link between veganism and mental disorders, the mental disorders seem to precede the mental disorders seem to precede the vegan status. So in terms of causality, it's not the vegan diet that's causing the mental disorder. It's the mental disorder that's may just be making one more likely to go vegan. There's very little data on mental disorders specifically. Sorry, not mental disorders specifically. There's very little data on eating disorders specifically.
Yeah, and the little data we do have, I think I actually sent you one of those papers, Mock.
Yeah.
It's kind of
just real quick, because people are getting confused in the chat. Sorry. When I say mental disorder make people more likely to go vegan, I mean things like depression. So like people can get like depressed, and then they may be more attuned to looking at animal suffering, and that may make them more depressed and be like more motivator to go vegan. I'm not saying mental disorders are the cause of veganism or something like that. People are like really confused, like in this like really weird hidden vegan chat where you seem to have a bunch of confused people.
Okay, so back to the like, for example, like it kind of makes sense. Like it's not super surprising. People who are like have a restrictive eating pattern, people that are, like what we would call orthorexic, they sometimes use veganism as a way to restrict. They also use other things like claiming they have food allergies. So in that, like, that is something that you'll see. So like the causality is actually in the other direction. One of the papers I did send you, like it indicated, again, it's one study and it was a survey, and they can't establish causality, but it seems like it could be that people who went vegan for health reasons or to lose weight, they were more likely to have a disordered eating pattern versus people that go vegan for ethical reasons. There's another paper that I sent Avi, but basically it wasn't research, but it was sort of like a summary statement, like an opinion, but by people who actually work with people with eating disorders, saying that one of the things you want to do, like, so if you have someone that's recovering from anorexia, they're inpatient, they need, to be fed, they need like intensive feeding, like refeeding and all that. If they're vegan, it doesn't, you can absolutely respect the veganism while you refeed. There are some adjustments that need to be made, but there's no reason to just outright reject it and assume it's part of their eating disorder. What they recommended was you refeed because people who are, malnourished don't have like great cognitive flexibility. So you're not going to have a very productive conversation at that point. Once they are refed and that, their nutritional status is restored, they're thinking more clearly, what you can do is then try to delve into their veganism more and see what their motivations were. And if they are ethical vegans, they are going to do better if their diet plan does not involve foods that they are opposed to. These are people that are already struggling with their relationship with food. If they have now a sense of guilt or, are disgusted by their food because they know where it came from, that's not going to do them any good. The idea is if they want to be ethical vegans, what you want to do is teach them how to do that in a way where their relationship with food is healthy and they are getting all the proper nutrition they need.
I agree with that. I'll just point out that unrelated to the question, but if any of the weirdos talking all the things they're saying want to come up and debate, like people like Man War or anyone like that, hey, here's your chance. Instead of like scurrying on like texting and whatnot, like I'm right here. And you can say debate pro or not all you want, but hey, listen, if you think I'm wrong about something, presumably you want the opportunity to show I'm wrong. If you think I'm doing something out of accord with my values or anything like that, I'm ready to listen.
Okay, we actually have, I think, hopefully I'm not mistaken here, Height. I think he is a philosopher. Maybe if you could clarify that. Height, your turn.
Oh, hey. Yeah, I did philosophy in my undergrad, and I try to live my philosophy nowadays. But I did want to say thanks for having me. Definitely really appreciate meeting Avi. I appreciated your absolute dismantling of Steve Kirsch. I thought that was incredibly beneficial to have in, the YouTube space. I also wanted to, Dantes earlier brought up how routinely, like, different forms of activism may interact in unexpected ways. Like, lots of times we'll get people here who are like, oh, the vegan teacher said this, and then we're actually able to serve as like a counterpoint, like, oh, we got them here because of the vegan teacher, but then they leave with, maybe they commit to go veganism because of other reasons that they encounter here. As Isaac's formal PR representative, has Isaac ever bullied someone maliciously, and then you, as his PR representative, are able to come in and smooth things out, and then be effective as an advocate for veganism in that way?
Yeah, I'll just say real quick, like the whole Isaac PR representative is a meme. I'm sure you know it's a meme. Yeah. So yes, I'll answer it like as Isaac's professional PR representative for the Ask Yourself Debate Bro Discord, and as a professional Infinity debater myself. The answer is yeah, sometimes. Sometimes people have gotten really triggered by Isaac. They've come to me and I've been able to sort of smooth things out, and it's actually been a productive conversation, and a conversation that probably wouldn't have happened had they not gotten triggered by Isaac. So yeah, to the point, I agree. There's like this really, really complicated like web of things going on, and it's going to be a very intense empirical process to try to figure that out, which just makes it even more hilarious when people try to present themselves as the person who's figured it out with not a shred of data. It's just really weird.
I tend to personally, I try not to condemn anyone's form of advocacy, although I try to model what I think is intuitively most effective. One thing that I do try to help people out with is if I do believe that they're making incorrect claims. Would you agree that those are forms of advocacy that we have data?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, yeah, cool. And I've recently joined Ask Yourself and Study Archive servers like a couple weeks ago. And I've got to say it's interesting because my previous experience was the only times I had heard of these communities was people complaining that, hey, I got, like Omni's saying, I got banned from Ask Yourself because I wasn't a vegan. I was like, that doesn't sound like, you probably bit some sort of unpalatable bullet that made you appear, at like a bad faith interlocutor or something like that. And I have to say that since I've joined the community, I have to say that comports with my initial intuitions and then my subsequent experience. So perhaps I'll be able to probe you at some other point for some of these other things. But yeah, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your answers, and I appreciate your projects as well.
Yeah, for sure. Feel free to ping me anytime. We could continue any conversation. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of just to be aware. I'm sure people aren't aware of this, but there's a whole bunch of weird contingency of people that are just really, really salty at the Ask Yourself and Study Archive communities. They're typically not the people really worth engaging with anyway, but with few exceptions. To be fair, there are some people who are salty about those communities that are worth engaging with. It's just very far in between. But yeah.
Yeah, I think there's different forms of activism that are going to reach a variety of people. I think that, certainly the quote unquote, when debate bros uses pejorative, it's not in recognition of the actual function of a quote unquote debate bro, which works really well either when people's idols who they have some sort of parasocial relationship with are embarrassed, like when somebody elevates Steve Kirsch to some platform that then they see them thrust off of, and they're like, shit, maybe I really need to reconsider my worldview. Or somebody who is just really recalcitrant to other more gentle forms of probing and really just need to face somebody who's rather unrelenting. I mean, of course, I don't have data for this, but this is just my intuitive assessment. But yeah. So I really appreciate that, and I'll catch you guys later.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to really say I really hope I don't get banned soon in there. Hopefully not. Yeah. So.
Well, look, I don't think people. I don't think this is this ban heavy. Yeah, people most. I'll say this: most of the bands I've seen, okay. So to the question is, are there some bands that I didn't agree with? Yeah, sure. Are most of the bands I did agree with? Yeah, sure. Most of the bands are just I'd be surprised that they weren't banned sooner. But yeah.
I got banned by association once, and also for a joke another time. Damn. Anyway, I don't want to. Whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Anyhow, we're still good to continue to go, or
yeah,
a little
sure.
bit more. Cool.
Yeah, we can go.
Cool. Great. Yeah, I do want to ask though to really do keep it to veganism. Thank you. So next.
Wait, why are we keeping it to veganism? It could be anything. It's an AMA.
Well, we're an animal rights server, so
All right.
Nora?
Can you guys hear me? Hello?
I mean, they're just not to say, because they're with veganism, obviously there are logical entailments regarding other aspects such as abortion, etc. Not to say that but anyhow. Nora, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I have one question. It often comes up when I'm doing activism. It's relating to how would we as vegans approach animal overpopulation? Usually they bring up I don't know, kangaroos in Australia or deer in other countries. Usually when they ask that question, I say I would recommend that on first pass, I think we should maybe, I don't know, instead of killing them or hunting them, we should just rather sterilize them and then hope that their numbers come down eventually. But I usually preface that with that I would go with whatever science finds is the most effective way and then the most moral way as well. Whether that be maybe even capture and putting them in sanctuaries. But what I wanted to ask you guys, since you guys are in the medical field, I know you don't pertain to animals as much and more humans, but would it even be possible to chemically sterilize animals remotely, with maybe tranquilizer darts or is that even a realistic thing?
It is realistic for so I do think it is a realistic thing. It depends on it's obviously going to depend on what species you're talking about. Just real quick, for the ethical part, I would treat them the same way I would treat mentally handicapped humans. So if you see a bunch of mentally handicapped humans breeding and you're concerned that they're breeding too much and there's going to be a whole bunch of suffering, whatever prescription you have for them, for the animal, I would just ask if you would be okay with that in the human context. So there is chemical birth controls actually. Actually, I have the company even that are selling birth control as a rodent control for instead of poisoning the rodent, it actually chemically sterilizes the rodent. Let me see if I can pull this up.
Yeah, and I guess I guess I would have to know how we handle it with humans. I don't actually know how we like.
Yeah, so so one example would be like Senes Tech. That's an agricultural biotechnology company. And it uses fertility management as a form of population control. So instead of like poisoning the rodents, what they'll do is they have a form of birth control that would chemically sterilize the rodents and their populations go down without actually killing the rodents. I'll post that company in general chat. So that's one technology that's being worked on. In terms of like the point I was making about in the human context is just made to be like a checker, just to say, like, for example, if you meet someone who says like, well, we need to shoot all these deer because they're overpopulating, I'm like, would you be okay in the human context for this like example in any way? Like, well,
yeah. So it's hard to find like a match when it comes to humans because we haven't really seen that come up, right? Like we haven't seen an overpopulation of people with like mental lower IQ or whatever. Like usually I think that comes down to like maybe
but
like
if there were,
our social.
Just imagine if there were. Imagine if there were this like mentally handicapped human population that were breeding a lot. Like what are the kind of things you would be okay with, and what are the kind of things you would not be okay with, and then just apply that to the animal scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if it didn't cause any suffering to them, I don't see like they would still be able to experience the pleasure of mating, and they just wouldn't have kids. I guess it would be how much they value experiencing like parenthood. I guess, and you'd have to figure out like if that's a big part of their existence or not.
Yeah. So I mean, so that's just the general approach I take. So if you'd be okay, if I would be okay with chemical technology as birth control for deer populations, for mentally handicapped human populations, then I'd also probably be okay with it in the deer population, unless there's some fundamental difference there.
Okay, I guess that answered my questions with so it is possible that we can do it, and I guess I'll have to do some more thinking on if it's ethical.
Posted in the general chat, a review, or Mr. Seitan actually posted like a review of it in general chat. So it is like these technologies are new. They're upcoming. Some of them have been means tested and have worked. And I know in rodent populations they have worked. I'm not aware of means testing in deer populations, but maybe they have been. So yeah, no, it is. To answer your question, yes, it is possible.
And then I guess to kind of go off of that, and this will be my last question, would be do you think it's ethical to prevent wild animal suffering to apply that like sterilization process to predators like like lions?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be great. The problem is if you sterilize, the concern is just even if you sterilize a lion, the concern is going to be all the brutal eating alive of the beings that they do before they breed.
Yeah, I guess it would be how much it's like comes down to that. I don't know if it comes down to like that argument, like deontology versus utilitarianism. Like if you view
just to be clear, this would be a concern
right
this would be a concern on both of those parts of my normative theory.
Yeah, I'm not super into philosophy. Like I don't completely understand everything to do with philosophy.
No,
but,
sure, I can explain. Yeah. So the point.
Let me just. Like when it comes down to it, it's like, do you value the rights of that lion to exist over like just like the suffering of the animals that it would kill, I guess.
Yeah, if someone needs to survive, and in order to survive, they need to start like eating a bunch of other beings. Like, so for example, let's again put it in the human context. Let's say there was this mentally handicapped human that needed to survive by eating other mentally handicapped humans. Does their right to exist outweigh the other individual's right to exist, and then right to not be inflicted that much pain and stuff like that? The answer is absolutely not. No, like trivially no. I would see no problem with someone preventing. Yeah,
with humans, we separate them, right, from society. We put them into
okay, but let's say
prison system or something, right?
If there's a pragmatic way to do that, sure. But let's say there wasn't. Let's say the only way you could do that is, hypothetically, the only way you know how to stop that is kill them. Like, if you're in that situation where the only pragmatic way to stop them is kill them, are you okay with killing them? Or are you going to let this person start eating a bunch of other people alive?
Yeah, and then I guess what this kind of eventually leads to is, like, do we even allow wildlife to exist, right? Because then we're sterilizing deers and these other animals, and then we're also killing off predators. So, like,
Well, just the deer thing is just a theoretic, by the way. It's just that if it could be shown that there's this massive amount of suffering that's happening for some overpopulation, then sure. I don't have a problem with like herbivores in the wild existing, although I do think that their existence has certain concerns that certain things that we should be concerned about. Like I think wildlife suffering is a moral concern, but I have a much bigger problem with predators who are going to just eat them alive. Like, yeah, that's just horrific.
Yeah, it's messed up. It's like our psychopaths, right? Like, it's like someone that just doesn't care.
Yeah, like if there were like a subspecies of humans that were like mentally handicapped, and then they, their need of survival is just to like bite into the flesh of other humans until they die. Like that's just horrific.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for the input, and I'll do some thinking on that. And you can send me back to the audience now. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So I guess to change the topic a little bit, what are the guidelines regarding how much and which specific B12 for vegans and perhaps non-vegans? Recommendations, rather like the guidelines, like 1,000 micrograms per week, or methylcobalamin or cyanocobalamin.
Yeah, so the RDA, you're going to see a little bit of variations between where you're looking depending on the age. Typically, I think you see for example, for ages 0 to 6 months, you could see like 0.4 micrograms, 7 to 12, 0.5, 1 to 3 years, 0.9, and then 4 to 8, 1.2. Some guidelines have have pegged it as 2.4 micrograms, 14 years and above.
What about
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was sorry. I was mostly just referring to like the supplements you'd buy or whatever action you take regarding.
Yeah, I think if you take a multivitamin that has at least 2.6 micrograms of B12 every day, I think you're going to be fine. I think also if you're going to supplement with B12, I think if you're dosing 25 micrograms a day, that's probably fine, or 50 micrograms a day, it's also probably fine. Again, I think a lot of this is not the dose that's in the B12 unless you're correcting an actual deficiency already. I think what's actually happening is just an execution problem. I think vegans are just doing a poor job of taking their supplement. And because I think that if a vegan were taking 2.4 micrograms of B12 every single day, I don't think they're going to get deficient, or at least not commonly, unless something else happens. I think what's likely happening is an execution issue.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess this serves as a daily reminder for everyone in chat to take your B12 supplement.
Yeah, please do. Please do take your B12 supplements. Don't try to get it from water or muddy water or feces, whether
Unwashed
it's your own
vegetables,
or
seaweed,
whether
tempeh.
it's your own or an animal's or anything like that. Yeah. So don't do any like it's embarrassing. Like this has to be like advice that's given at this point, but like yeah, please don't do that.
Barnacle.
And one thing, and don't do it. Don't get it from seaweed either. That's actually dangerous. So yeah.
Oh, never heard about that one before.
Yeah, like spirulina and stuff like that. It's actually it's pseudo B12.
Okay. No one wants to add something. I guess we'll go to the next person. Hims. I'm not sure how to spell their name. Hello. Can
Is
anyone
it just
hear
me,
them?
or I can't hear.
Nope. Me neither. Yeah. Please try and fix your mic, and I'll bring you up there again. So I'll go with my next question, if it's all right. So I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there has been this new study published, I believe peer-reviewed, by Dr. Salish Rao. I think that's the name. That animal agriculture is at least responsible for was it 90? It was like an incredibly high number. I think like at least 97% or something of greenhouse gas emissions. And yeah, so I'm just wondering like what data regarding greenhouse gas emissions globally or wherever you are the most accurate ones to your opinion, and maybe if you
Yeah,
have
so I'll just say that one is probably not going to be accurate. I'll just tell you that right now. I'm not sure where. Like, I haven't like this. Typically, there are like two estimates you see: one for the globe and one for the United States specifically. The one for the globe is a bit larger than the one from the United States, just because there's a lot more greenhouse gas emissions coming from other sources in the United States. It's not 90%. It's just not. Sorry.
I think the argument I would have to look at it again, but I think it's because they take like a methane for like a 100-year perspective instead of like a shorter perspective, or the other way
I
around.
think I think it's the other way around. Yeah, typically they do 100 years, but even on it's going to be a hard stretch even on a 10, even on a shorter time. It would be very hard.
On a shorter time, that's how it should be conducted.
Yeah, the 100. Well, they would have to it's a very hard argument to make to justify a shorter time. I will tell you that 100 is standard usage in the environmental literature. If you want to make the case for like 10 or something like that, you need to actually explain why. You also have to explain why a static, like there are different models where it's not just like a 10-year versus a 100-year, but if it's also like treats methane as like a static versus like a fluid, like some type of fluid. I'm probably using the wrong terminology here, but static versus a dynamic gas, because there are certain properties of methane that are different from carbon dioxide. So yeah, I mean that's a whole different can of worms. And if you're going to hinge your hat on having it to be 10 years, like that's going to be a very contentious position. If you can defend it, go ahead. But I have my suspicions and reservations if someone can actually make that position work.
What study or percentage do you think, to your opinion, would be or what you believe to be the most accurate number?
It's not like there's one. See, here's the thing. It's not like there's going to be one is more accurate than the other. They're both accurate. It's just like using it for a different goal. So it's just going to be dependent on your goals. In terms of accuracy, the static versus dynamic is going to be is going to factor into accuracy. And I actually do think that the dynamic one is probably going to be more accurate. So I think we are using, although it's harder to calculate in some cases.
Maybe perhaps it'd be more interesting to talk about just mitigation potential. And
I mean, that's gonna factor into the same, like, it's all gonna factor into this, like, the same kind of calculus and like mitigation potential. Whether you're talking, look, I just don't see why it wouldn't be relevant. Like, here's the thing: like, methane is typically treated as a gas that just goes in and then it stays, and rather than like evaluating its warming potential as in accordance to its half-life. So like there's I don't know the full depth of the different models, but I know that there's one model that just treats it like the same type of gas as carbon dioxide, rather than treating it as its own gas that does have a lot of dynamic effects. That would impact the accuracy, but the year thing is just not something that impacts the accuracy as much as it impacts like our goals. So for example, if we have a target goal of doing X, Y, Z, one of the best arguments for using a 10-year is if we have a target goal of 2 degrees Celsius within the next 10 years, yeah, you might want to use 10 years. But if we don't have that, then there really isn't much of a case to use 10 years.
You would agree though with regarding, there is a significant mitigation potential on regarding plant-based diets.
Yeah, absolutely. I just don't think it's going to be to 90-something% of like greenhouse gas emissions.
Right. I'm not sure if Barnacle, you want to comment on that, Mock?
No.
I'm good.
Right.
I'm good.
Okay, last two people, and then we could end this if everyone's cool with that. Unless we really want to continue, but yeah. Right?
Yeah, hello. So do you think there's an important difference between causing harm and allowing harm to happen?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and like, how does that influence your views on wild animal suffering and effective altruism and stuff like that?
Sure. So I would view it. So, for example, if I see a deer grazing, I would view it as a lot worse to go and shoot the deer, rather than if someone else were to shoot the deer. Rather if like I didn't act to stop the person from shooting the deer or something like that. Just like, or actually a better example for that, to make it less complicated, would be, and then we'll bring it to the animal context first. But if, like, for example, if you saw a baby drowning in a bathtub, for example, and you let the baby drown, like, I think that would be a really bad thing. However, if I saw a baby outside of the bathtub and I put the baby in the bathtub and drowned the baby, as bad as the first example is, I think the second example is worse. And so for example, if I think it would be like a lot worse if I were to shoot a deer than not stop a lion from killing the deer, even though there would be, assuming like the same amount of pain was involved and whatnot. So I don't think, like, in terms of like wild animal, I don't think killing predators or things like that is going to be a moral obligation. I think it would just be supererogatory. Same thing for effective altruism. I think a lot of forms of that effective altruism, like charity, for example, I think those are going to be, most of them at least, are probably going to fall under supererogatory as opposed to obligatory, at least on my view, unless there's like some crazy threshold that's met.
And would they be similar to kind of watching the child drown in the bathtub, like to allow animal suffering to happen in nature, for example? Do you see them as kind of similar things?
Yeah. I mean, I do see them as kind of similar. They're both horrific, and I actually do think that if it was right in front of you and you had the means to do it, it would be pretty crazy to not do it. So maybe that would be obligatory. Although I wouldn't judge a lot of people for not doing it simply because a lot of people haven't thought this situation out. But I would do it. Like if I saw a lion about to pounce on a deer, and I had a gun and I was able to like have good aim and everything and just like put the lion down. Yeah, I would do it.
Yeah, okay. So I take it that the intentions are pretty important there. So for example, if you had the intention of drowning the baby, but then you kind of discovered that the baby was drowning already and you didn't do anything, it would be kind of the same thing as just actually putting them in the bathtub and drowning them.
So intentions for me are important to judge individuals. They're not as much important to me to judging actions. So if like a person unwittingly took a baby and drowned them versus unwittingly didn't save the baby from being drowned, I'm going to view the action of drowning the baby as worse than the non-action of not saving the baby. But in terms of the person, like that's the way I judge the person is going to just be their intentions instead of judging the action. I'll judge the person in intention if their intentions were in accord with saving the baby or drowning the baby. So if someone had the intention of saving the baby, but they ended up inadvertently drowning, I'm not going to judge them as a bad person. I'm going to say their action was really bad, but as a person, they aren't really bad. They were trying to save the baby. The reverse is true as well. If someone tries to drown the baby, but they inadvertently save the baby from being drowned, it's going to be the same thing the other way around. So I'm going to judge their action as great. You saved the baby from being drowned. However, in terms of you're a complete piece of shit. You were trying to drown the baby. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that answers my question. So yeah. Thank you.
All right, cool.
You can just let go to the next person if you want. I don't want to start a big discussion on it.
We had someone that really wanted to, I think, ask that question, but they didn't have their mic working. But yeah, thank you for your question. Great. Do you have the invite? Oh no, I can still not hear you. Mark, can we spill the beans on something?
God, do you really want to do this now?
No, we don't have to do it now, but yeah, never mind. It's on B12. But...
Wait, what are we spilling the beans on? Don't you can't do that and just like not give it away. Like
Avi,
is that against your normative view?
Yeah.
Avi,
right.
I think.
What's up?
So there is apparently there's some paper that challenges the idea that it's do you remember when we were talking about the B12 and the cancer thing, where based on the evidence we looked at, it seems like it wasn't the B12 supplementing per se that increased the risk of cancer. It was more that relative to someone that was depleted in B12, you would have a higher risk because being depleted in B12 would make it harder for cells to divide. That's slightly protective. Do you remember that whole thing?
Yeah. I remember that whole thing.
So Mona has a paper that I think, she'd have to find it, but like that sort of challenges that. But I think that you should look at it beforehand, and then we can have a discussion on it another time.
No, I want to see it.
I don't think she has it right now. But
wait, because I've seen a lot of papers and it really does fit into what we were saying. Because I've seen a lot of papers on this topic, a lot of papers trying to make this point, and I think all of them actually do fit into what I was saying. So I would really like to see what paper that is because I could just answer the question very trivially by saying like, oh, I actually already saw this, and yeah, it does fit into what we were saying.
She hasn't found it yet.
Okay.
Also, are you aware of there being like a capacity for intrinsic factor, and because of that, you need to supplement the B12 twice a day? Because she was talking about that as well. Not as relevant in the States where all of our like B12 supplements are like 5,000 times the RDI, but might be relevant if you're taking like something closer to the actual RDI.
I'm still not aware. So here's the thing: like a B12 supplement in conjunction, even if it's from a multivitamin. In conjunction with like the prevalence of fortified foods, especially in just about every developed country, the answer is probably not. You probably do not need to almost certainly not need to supplement twice a day. because of intrinsic factor concerns. You're gonna max out your intrinsic factor with one supplement, and you're almost certainly are going to get some amount of B12 just because of the ubiquitous fortification in so many different foods at a later point in time.
So that might be the reason for the US and for the UK and for Canada. But for example, in Germany, it's definitely not the case. And I know for a lot of like mainland Europe, it's not the case either. So that's why I just wanted to make the point, because I know.
So the thing is, like, based on all the data I've seen from like even from not the UK, not the US, and not Canada, people who supplement, and the current like recommendations are to supplement once a day. I'm assuming they are supplementing it based on the according recommendations. So if they supplement as indicated, they don't really have deficiency in B12. So
yeah, but the indication for the supplement is not to supplement, because for example, like we have like 5 micrograms or 10 micrograms supplements available. So the recommendation for vegans in those countries, and the reason why the vegans are not usually vitamin B12 deficient, is that the recommended supplementation is something between 150 and 200 micrograms per day.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well then, look that okay. So I see what you're saying. That could be a thing. In either case, it still seems to be like if you do that, couldn't. So if the question is, in these countries where there isn't much fortification because of these intrinsic factor saturations, are you going to just be at this problem if you only took 2.4 micrograms once a day rather than twice a day? I actually don't know the answer to that. Because I would have to see any like data, like parse out really granular data for that, and I'm not sure if that data is available. So I don't know, but regardless, it does seem to be very easy to supplement with 100, 150 micrograms a day. It doesn't seem to be an issue. And if you do that once a day, you're gonna max out your intrinsic factor, but you're also gonna have diffusion at that doses as well.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the whole point. But the other thing, I think this is very important, is because there's a lot of people who are just eating more plant-based and maybe are just eating animal products maybe like 4 or 5 times a week. And for them, it's a genuine problem because they don't, like vegans, they always get like, we bombard each other with like, you have to take your vitamin B12 supplement. So for them, it's usually not a problem. But for a lot of people who are like kind of in the in-between zone, they would actually need a vitamin B12 supplement, but they're not taking one because they don't feel like they're being addressed. And I think in a community, maybe not here as much because a lot of the people here are vegan, but especially when it comes to an audience that is also like veg curious and or something like that, it's actually very important to like point those things out.
No, yeah, for sure. I agree that as meat eaters go less meat eating and not vegetarian, they there could very well be a case that they are more B12 deficient than the vegans are because they're not educated about B12 supplementation for sure.
Thanks for the information, Mona. I just want to also say definitely when you do find those papers, and if you have any information about like B12 supplementation, like in mainland Europe where it might be different, I would love to see it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like most of the information on what supplementation looks like here is just when I go to the pharmacy or when I go to the drugstore and see what is available. And like when I look at most of the products that are sold here, because it's like the relationship that most Europeans have to supplementation is very, very different than I would say Canadians and people from the UK and US Americans. And people are a lot more wary of supplementation. And secondly, since organic plant milks, for example, are very rarely fortified, sometimes not even with calcium, and since organic is very popular and very common here as well, there's a lot of people who actually do not consume fortified foods. And for example, mock meats, I think I've seen like once or twice them being fortified. So yeah, this is just like
there's
what's
two
going
problems
on here.
Two problems in one. Like problem one is well, 3 problems. Problem 1, people not being educated about supplementation. Problem 2, organic being popular. Problem 3, organic popularity contributing to lack of information of supplementation. Yeah.
I'm gonna look up the papers, and maybe some other time we can talk about that. But right now, it's very late. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I got
Okay. Yeah. I guess I want to finish it with the last question, and then I guess we'll do maybe some.
Is this where the beans get spilled?
Oh no, that was it.
No, they got spilled. That was
Wait,
spillage.
what? Okay, that was really anticlimactic.
Sorry to disappoint you, Avi.
We wanted to see it. We really wanted to see a debate on B12. Sorry. Anyhow. So. Yes.
Yeah, you have to exchange your data before you do an empirical debate. That's why I was against it.
So, as the last question, and then we can maybe do some closing statements. So, yeah, are there any events or next debates or with any and all of you that we might expect in the future to happen, or anything interesting around the horizon?
A lot of it is just really sporadic. So maybe I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. There are some like, but I'm not sure exactly when they're gonna come to fruition.
Barnacle? Mac?
I don't debate.
I said Mac. Oh. You don't debate?
Me? Oh, Miguel, if you're here, come for me. Anyways.
Okay. Well, anyhow.
I'll just say for in terms of like, if like, here's the thing, like I try to debate when there are disagreements. At this point it's hard to get a debate because there's a lot of people who are very easily willing to talk shit, but those same people are very, very cowardly when it comes to actually stepping up to the plate and debating me. So if anyone here disagrees with me on anything, hey, like I said, you're more than welcome to engage with me in a debate or in a conversation or whatever. The same thing goes for anything in any other community watching this. So, yeah.
Yeah, I really thought I would get you on a contradiction once. Fortunately, it was not the case. I'm not sure if anyone's if anyone knows about that.
Don't take it personally. I don't remember it. If you could I don't know.
No, it's fine. It was regarding the abortion, because you were talking about it's just there are 2 traits, right? Which is having had sentience and then potential future sentience, and then also that would be a conjunction, and then the second trait would be having sentience, right? And then I wouldn't say logically.
Oh, I vaguely remember. I vaguely remember this now. Yeah.
But anyhow, yeah, I'm just trying to make the stage more fun, but I'm seemingly failing. So thanks a lot for coming on, and I think this has majorly been incredibly productive and educational. So thank you a lot for coming on. Really appreciate it, and perhaps who knows in the future, some more. I don't know. And if you have anything more to say, feel free to make any last comments.
Yeah. Here's just what I'll say. I'll just do a shameless promo for my community. My community is Study Archives. We're very heavily empirical based. We try to get to the bottom of empirical questions. A lot of it is related to veganism. Not everything is related to veganism. But we try to do it in an objective, unbiased way to the greatest possible extent we can. So I'll post my Discord server in the general chat over here if anyone wants to join. Here you go. Oh, wait, never mind. It prohibited me from doing that. It deleted my...
it's in the announcement. If you look in the announcement, all the links are there. There's socials as well.
Yeah, if you look in the announcements, that's where you could find my Discord link.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and if
if
you go to the
mods
YouTube
could,
videos, you know, I'm in some of them, so that might be the only redeeming factor to watch them. But you know, come see me. Yeah.
There you go.
Maybe some of the mods could post it in VC text at the link. I actually have one more really quick question. Actually, sorry if we could do this really quick.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
How do you do it with, because like with your archive and you have data, and I'm presuming that not all that you're using direct quotes there very often, and that a lot of it is behind paywalls or is copyrighted. Are you not worried with legality there?
No, because so a lot of it is behind paywalls. That's true. A lot of so here's the thing. Like in terms of copywriting, there is like two camps. Like there are certain camps where people really, really care, and certain camps where like even journals like really don't care. And you'll see like so typically within the field of fortunately within the field that I'm in, journals very much don't care if they find one of their papers are out and about somewhere. I don't know why. There are certain fields with like certain like philosophy books and stuff like that that I want to make public that I can't, because those journals, they really do care if that book is like out and about somewhere, and they will like come and make a complaint. So that I stay away from. I also
What about
yeah, also like Sci-Hub is like so ubiquitous at this point where people get behind. It's so easy to get behind a paywall. It's just like it's everywhere. The papers are just like all over the place, and any individual can access it. It's just at this point, it's kind of like remember the days of Napster and stuff like that, where like if you downloaded like if you downloaded a song, like aren't you worried you downloaded the song and it's on this? But like these days, it's everywhere. So it's just like that's where we're going. So it's really not as much of a issue.
It's just that your archive is like really public. I was maybe if you know specifically about like Elsevier, who owns like a lot of science. It's not just like paywall. It's also like even just things that you can see publicly are copyrighted. And I was thinking about making a website myself, because I'm somewhat of a I think the correct term like data hoarder would be. I also have like I might.
So real quick on that. Elsevier typically. So I try to. I know things are copyrighted, but I try to make it so that things that are copyrighted are not just like willy nilly posted full text, unless it's somewhere else that is available easily. And so even in that case, the things that are copyrighted are typically things that are also readily available elsewhere. So whether it's like just a full text link to something that is there that's copyrighted, that's fine.
Yeah, because I was
there.
Yeah, because
I'll also point out that Elsevier doesn't really care that much. About their
That's great though, because if I'm not mistaken, they own like such a massive amount of the science, and it's so annoying that there are these. Like,
I'll tell you who cares. I'll just save you I'll tell you who really cares. The people who really care are going to be like in the more social science, humanities type, where there's like whole books that are like published online, like in their entirety. That I've seen people get into trouble with.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. Yeah, no, I'm specifically wondering because like I was looking to make a website where I have a bunch of just direct quotes, and I already have like perhaps even like similar or more data.
But it's also that's fine. Yeah, you should do that. One thing I will say, and this is the case for study archives as well, just to make sure you have a backup in case some kind of idiot does do something. Just in case anything happens for whatever reason, do have a backup of your website, just like I have a backup of my archives. So if anyone does something, it's not going to really affect me.
Yeah, so you would say, for example, if I have like a couple phrases, maybe like something close to like an abstract or things like abstract, you think I probably not have a problem with it?
No, I don't. I don't. I think you're getting a little bit neurotic on it, and I don't think you're going to have an issue.
Okay, that'd be great. I got quite a lot of data, so that's exciting. Anyhow, yeah, no, I'm really glad. I'm not sure if Barnacle and Mock really want to say something still, but I'm really thankful for everyone participating, everyone that is in the audience that asked questions. Yeah, really thank you. And if you have anything else to say, please feel free to.
I have a question for you, Dantas. You put Avi's and Barnacle's name in the AMA, but you didn't put mine. I basically became an honorary member. Like, what's with this disrespect? I need to know right now. Put your hands up.
So I kind of, I don't know.
You kind of just disrespected me to my face. This is not be tolerated.
Okay, so basically, my whole from the start, I was trying to want to get Avi and Barnacle on, and then at the last moment, you were like, I think you suggested to help out.
I didn't.
So I was like, okay, great, but the main focus.
I just jokingly said that I would introduce them. I didn't even get to introduce them. Then I stuck around. No one kicked me off stage, and then I piped in here and there. So it's okay. I'm the stats guy, so I had to be here to bless these two and make sure that they didn't stay up past their curfew. So that's it.
Well, my sincere apologies, Mark. If hopefully
you better apologize. All right, we can close.
Everyone, Mark, our beloved stats god, amazing stats person, and any and all stats. Mark.
Yes, praise me more. Yes,
Barnacle.
Okay. Mock is a very jealous stats god.
Yes, this is all true.
Anything you want to say, Barnacle? Then one.
No, just remember to worship. That's all.
Yeah, worship me. Yeah. All
right, everyone.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Everyone, thank you so much. I'll be leaving the stage, and see you all next time. And also, please try to not ban me. Thank you. Hopefully,
you're so paranoid about. Leave it.
If I get banned, F's in the chat. I swear.
God, stop.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, we're good.
All right, take care, everyone.
Hey.
All right, have a good night.